in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
In America, they watch you and they track your every move. They're even putting poison in your food. In America, the people are too blind to see the truth. But it's too late and there's nothing we can do. In America, just watch your favorite show and watch the news, so they can pre-program you with your views. In America, get a job, obey the law, support the troops, and just kick back, cause there's nothing we can do. This is the divided states of Illuminati land. People stumbling all over the place like zombies, man. Just like the Walking Dead, they got this country zombified. All your water's fluoridated, all your food is modified. You are what you eat, so I guess that means that you're a GMO. And you don't even know, but you're too blind to see it, though. You have to be asleep to have the American dream. Just how they need it, cause your freedom was never a thing. The best kind of slaves are the slaves that don't know that they're slaves. Stuck in a daze and they behave how they're told to behave. Good little sheeple people, always happy, always gleeful. No revolting, no rebelling, no uprising, no upheaval. The ones that rule us wanna keep us all clueless and weak. It's not looking so good for humans, the future is bleak. You think you are unique, but really you're a replica, created by the false education that they gave you here. In America, they watch you and they track your every move. They're even putting poison in your food. In America, the people are too blind to see the truth. But it's too late, and there's nothing we can do. In America, just watch your favorite show and watch the news, so they can pre-program you with your views. In America, get a job, obey the law, support the troops, and just get back, cause there's nothing we can do.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government
it is the problem.
We are conditioned every minute of every day, and being ignorant is just the American way.
Whoa.
The national debt is a debt we can never repay.
Hey.
But if they say to pay your taxes, you better obey. Hypocritical kingdom of wicked criminals, using symbols and signals to fill your head with subliminals. When you watch TV, it's corroding your mind. When the 5G network goes online, there'll be nowhere to hide.
You hear that part?
Frequencies all around us so frequently, nothing is what
5G
it seems
is
to be. They deceive
hive
us so
mind
easily.
technology.
No one even believe in me while they're meeting in secrecy. Have you seen the world recently, never treating us decently? What happened to liberty and justice for all? Dictators free themselves, but we
The
don't
new
get
world order
nothing
will
at
fall.
all. I just want you to know the truth, so please don't shoot the messenger. It's a bitch, but this is how it is when you live in
America.
They watch you and they track your every move.
In the
They're even putting
Netherlands.
poison in your food. In America,
In
people are
Israel.
too blind to see the truth.
In
But it's too
Canada.
late, and there's nothing we can do. In America, just watch your favorite show and watch the news.
In
So
Australia.
they can pre-program you with your views.
In New Zealand.
Obey the law, support the troops,
And everywhere else in between that the New World Order can conquer. That's right, folks. We are in a battle against the New World Order. Evil elite. And I need one more song. We're gonna hear Destiny Lab real quick, and then we're gonna get rolling, folks. I'm just waking up from a nap that I shouldn't have took, or maybe I should have took it. I don't know. In Thousand Oaks, California. What's up? In Detroit, Michigan. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. Good to see you, good people, man. Good to see you guys. It's been a little while.
Now let's see.
But I had the storm come through.
Looks nice and
All right, let me
smells
get some medication in me, and we're gonna get rolling. Woo! But the sky is falling. The sky.
Run for your lives, the sky is falling. At least that's what you think if you've been following the fake news. Fascinating and frightening. They don't report truth, they ignore and deny it. Chicken Little's buy it, CNN supplies it to rile up these liberal mobs that get violent. They march in defiance, bust people to riots. You ask them why they're here, it's like silence. No dialogue, they don't want to debate. They can't articulate their thoughts, all they know is they hate. Believe they're on a team called the liberal left. They want to be victims, so they march lockstep. They're intolerant of all opposing opinions, following their master's plan. They're like the minions. The fundamental difference in our two worldviews is I'm offended by lies and they're offended by truth. People sick of the politically correct, evident in the president-elect. CNN said Hillary would win. Instead, we're making America great again. People sick of the politically correct, evident in the president-elect. CNN said Hillary would win. Instead, we're making America great again.
Ah, here we are.
Making America hate
Undermine
again.
the faith of the masses and their leaders. If you tell them a lie,
That's what
don't
it's
tell a
about.
little one. Tell a big one.
No doubt.
Something very scary and evil is on the loose. Let's hope it's momentary and people are just confused. Ordinarily, we've always had multiple different views. With the freedom to believe and speak the way we choose, and people changed. Almost like they've been possessed, became deranged. The socialists and feminists. As soon as Donald Trump became the president, something entered all the brains of the liberal left. Personalities split like a switch had been flipped. And the Hollywood elitists all lost their grip. They found out really quick their polls were all skewed, and everything they watched in life was fake news. So many walked away, the blue wave was just a puddle. They don't know what to say because they're living in a bubble. They like creative problems just so they can solve them. Chicken little liberals who think the sky is falling. The
sky is falling.
Evident in the president-elect. CNN said Hillary would win. Instead, we're making America great again. People sick of the politically correct. Evident in the president-elect. CNN said Hillary would win. Instead, we're making America great again.
Making America hate again. All right. Anyway, so glad you people are here with me. Let's get down to it. 9 of you here. Hey, Brendan Mitchell. Hey, Voynich. Hey, Brian Stavely. Rick Swain. Jay in the house. And a few more just listening. Wondering what I will say about the Zionists. Okay. Yes, Tommy still has a roof. Yes, I do. Voynich. A big limb did fall on my roof. And amazingly, it didn't puncture it. It did rip away the power line to my house. It ripped it away from the house, and I've still got to get that secured. So, like, if the power company came through right now and saw my power line hanging the way it is, they would turn off my power, and I would have to get, an electrician out here and get it fixed. But I had power all the way through the storm. I'm one of the only people. Very few people had power all the way through the storm. The hurricane, I should say. It was a hurricane. And yeah. So lots of trees down, several trees down on my property. And all of those were from my neighbor's trees that fell onto my property. And maybe I'll share some of those pictures later for those who aren't friends with me on Facebook and got to see them. But I'm sure y'all saw plenty of damaged pictures if you watched the news for that reason. I mean, I know most of us don't just sit around and watch the news anyway. But I'm in Pensacola, Florida, so I'd say the biggest thing right now is the fact that the 3 Mile bridge, the brand new 3 Mile bridge, has been damaged. So we have no way to go from Pensacola over to Gulf Breeze that way. As far as the bridge, they have to go the long way around, and that's a real inconvenience for people. But yeah, a huge section. I want to say a big chunk was taken out of a brand new bridge that's 3 miles long that goes from Pensacola to over to Gulf Breeze, Florida, and it was hit by runaway barge, and then it was hit by a crane. I think the crane maybe did the most damage when it hit it. So yeah, it's going to take a month or two for them to get that back open. Now, when Ivan came through here many years ago, it had 40-foot waves, so it had more than double what the wave height were with this storm, and it took out part of the interstate and another bridge. When I say interstate, Interstate 10, that's a huge interstate in the south. Anyway, so yeah, there's lots of damage. There's lots of damage just around the corner here. There is a what you call it, a mobile home that looks like a Mack truck drove through the house, and there's like two sections now instead of one long trailer or whatever. It's a split in half by a tornado or whatever the heck went through it. But yeah, lots of houses crushed by trees. They're the building next to the building I work at, the granite shop, our landlord's building, which is a big building. It has a lot of office space in it. There's a radio station and a U-Haul place that rents U-Haul trucks and trailers, and then a lot of empty space too that they hadn't rented out. But that whole roof peeled off just unbelievably. Of course, I went live, so y'all probably saw all that. But anyway, so there's a lot of damage. There definitely is, and we got through Ivan, and we'll get through this. And most everybody's getting their power back on now. Like I said, I had mine all the way through, even my internet all the way through. I did lose the internet a little bit after the storm went through, which was weird, but it came back pretty quick too. So I'm thankful to be alive, and there's not much damage to my house, so I'm good. There's plenty of crap in the yard. I mean, it's a disaster still, and I had to go over and help my neighbor's house. Now their roof was damaged, and I've still got a little work left to do on their roof, but I got the most part of it done that needed to be done. But all right, so let's move on with the topic here. Good to see, like I said, good to see everybody here. And we're talking about Zionism, Zionists today. And I want to say first off that I am not against the Jews or anybody for that matter, period, in the world. I do speak out, stand up, speak up against evil. So anybody, any group that's evil, I'll certainly call that out. And I I know that Israel is considered God's chosen land, and Jerusalem is his city. And I know that not all Jews are Zionists. Thank goodness for that too. And you have people that you have Jews that speak out, even a rabbi that speaks out against Zionism, which you're about to see here in just a minute. So you can have a radicalized religion. I mean, any religion could be radicalized, I do believe, and used for nefarious reasons. So there's that too. All right, so let's jump into this, and I'm going to introduce you to Zionism and go from there. So this is a ultra-Orthodox rabbi answers why did he protest AIPAC. This is from last March, March of 2019. But just listen to what he talks about with Zionism here. And we don't have any sound. That was weird. Hang on.
Rabbi Yisrael
There we
David
go.
Weiss joins me now live from New York. Rabbi, I appreciate you being with us. You've attended demonstrations today protesting this year's AIPAC conference, not just here in Washington, but also in New York. What's the message from protesters at those rallies today?
With the help of the Almighty, that He should bestow upon me His truth and wisdom, that we may convey the message of the Almighty and of the Jewish people.
Okay, right off the bat, do you see his ID badge there, his name tag? It says a Jew, not a Zionist. I like that.
Our message is quite simple. We are a religion called Judaism that we've been practicing for 3,000 years. It is to be subservient to God and uphold His covenant, the Torah. But unfortunately, a little over 100 years ago, a movement called Zionism has really hijacked our religion, for a base material nationalism, mostly by non-religious Jews. And very clearly, the chief rabbis of Palestine in 1947, prior to its ratification by the United Nations, these are United Nations documents. There was a meeting in the United Nations in the delegation in Jerusalem and Al-Quds, where the chief rabbi claimed and stated, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. This was Rabbi Dushinsky, declaration before the United Nations, July 16th, 1947. This is the view.
If I had $1 for every time something major has happened on July 16th, my birthday, and David Weiss's birthday, man, I swear there's so many things connected with that date. I don't know. It's weird.
Of the religious people true to our religion. We are to serve God, not to occupy or steal or kill or oppress. In fact, since the destruction of the two temples, we are not even allowed to have Jewish sovereignty return and make our own country. So, and this was respected for 2,000 years. We were on the Ottoman Empire. Yes.
Rabbi, if I can interject for a moment, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, equated anti-Zionism today with anti-Semitism. I want to get your reaction on that comparison.
Yeah, this is good right here.
That is part of this Nakba, the tragedy, because never the twain shall meet. Anti-Zionism is a righteous issue. It is to stand up for a criminal offense, a horrendous offense of occupying people, not only the Palestinian people, but I want you to know that the Jewish people in Palestine are being brutally beaten daily because they demonstrate peacefully. We don't have guns. They're beaten with horse. They demonstrate peacefully.
Without guns. All right. Yeah, just let me just stop there for a second. All right, because the Zionists have a plan for peace in the world, and it's coming, folks. But it's the same plan that the Antichrist is going to use, peace and security. So check it out. It's the Noahide laws. This show right here isn't even about the Noahide laws. I have nothing open and ready, prepared to talk about the Noahide laws in this show. But I'm just telling you right now, they're coming, and they're already being implemented. They have one of them's already been implemented in my state, but they're being implemented worldwide. And they the Zionists will use the Noahide laws to enslave and control everybody. Okay. Anyway, that they can, of course.
We don't have guns. They're beat with horses. Their children, women are arrested because they refuse to go to the army. There's nothing more scandalous than this, because we are a conscientious objectors. Imagine that in the state they call themselves a Jewish state, yet they refuse to recognize the rights of the Jewish people to observe our Torah. And we cry with the Palestinian people, and the world is being duped, and they're
the world's being
cowered
duped
into believing that if they don't support the Zionist state, they're anti-Semitic. While in truth, the state
Dean,
of Israel is exacerbating anti-Semitism. History is
they want the world to be the state of Israel.
Is proof how Jews coexisted in harmony, even though we have a different religion than the Muslim people, but that was never an impediment to coexistence. The impediment is the creation of a flawed, selfish occupational state that's masquerading in my religion. And the Zionists, who mostly don't look religious, look at Netanyahu, they don't suffer when they go around the world. The Jewish people who look like Jews, who are true to our religion, are hated and detested because of what the actions of the Zionists that is against God. We plead with the world, do not be intimidated, speak up and hear the voices of the Jewish communities in Jerusalem,
and the
Noahide
laws.
Of thousands of Jews who are living there, who are gathering there, and around the world, whether it is in England, whether it is in Canada, wherever there is a very religious community, they are anti-Zionist, and they are pleading with the world, respect us, respect that we can uphold our religion. My grandparents died in Auschwitz. We suffered because we were Jewish.
Rabbi,
and now Zionism is only
unfortunately, we have
bloodshed.
to leave it there.
Yes.
Appreciate you being with us, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
They wanted to shut him up quick. So there you are. There's a real rabbi telling you that Zionism is garbage, bad. Yes, indeed, it is. So this is the future of Israel as a Zionist entity, and I'm going to finish watching this before I share it. But yeah, it's going to have some interesting telltales in it. And let me just hit that right there. We're not going to watch that right now. This is what is Zionism 3.0, put in a little pretty package. And look at the number 322. How nice of them. Yeah. You know that's on purpose. 322.
Our aspiration for a homeland is as old as the Israelites who wandered in the desert. Long before the term Zionism was coined, it was a dream we nurtured in our collective memory throughout the diaspora. The modern Zionist movement was born in the 19th century. Incited by the Dreyfus Affair, Theodor Herzl and his contemporaries formed the first Zionist Congress. They expressed the need for a Jewish state, and the religious idea of a homeland, Zion, evolved into a political one. This was Zionism 1.0, the aspirational stage in the quest for a Jewish homeland. Jews gradually migrated to the region, first under Ottoman rule and then later under the British Mandate. Following World War II and the Holocaust, what had already been agreed upon became eminently clear. It was time for the Jews to have their own state. And in 1948, David Ben-Gurion, with the backing of the United Nations, declared Israel's independence. This marked the start of Zionism 2.0, building a home for the dispersed Jewish people. Israel fought for its life, absorbed massive waves of immigrants, many of whom came as refugees. Israel endured wars, overcame an economic crisis, weathered social unrest, and signed difficult but crucial peace treaties. The birth of modern Israel inspired Jews all around the world, and Israel quickly became a unifying story, receiving invaluable support from diaspora Jewry. Today, it has become a regional power, an economic success, a cultural hub, a thriving Jewish state.
Zionism 2.0 was a period during which many Israelis believed that all Jews should make Aliyah, and that Jewish life outside of Israel would eventually disappear. But diaspora Jewry continued to thrive and evolve. And at the turn of the 21st century, we have surpassed all expectations. For the first time in Jewish history, there is both a strong Jewish homeland
and a vibrant Jewish diaspora. This signals the beginning of a new era, the era of Zionism 3.0. Zionism 3.0 demands that we ask ourselves a new set of questions. What does it mean to be a Zionist today? Are we still one
Let me
people?
tell you.
Or will the two populations grow further apart?
Probably.
How will these centers of Jewish life relate to each other? Z3 insists that we adopt a new paradigm, one that embraces a strong partnership between the centers of Jewish life. It requires all backgrounds and perspectives to join in conversation. Z3 is about transcending our differences,
Welcome, Carrie.
strengthening our sense of peoplehood, and embracing our shared destiny together. This is Zionism 3.0, Z3. Come join the conversation.
Ha 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 ha. Oh, really? You want me to join, huh? Ha 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 ha. Okay, then. All right, here we have Palestinian Christians under Israeli occupation. We're just going to glance at this because this is part of what they're doing, of course.
When Trump says that Israel is one of the great democracies in the world, I would say that's the biggest bullshit I've ever had.
We're here in Bethlehem, home to an ancient Palestinian Christian community, to hear what they have to say about Christians in the West supporting Israel, Donald Trump's move to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and to see what life is really like here for Christians living in the occupied West Bank.
It's 4:21 in not in California, on the East
I
Coast.
always try to tell my child that we don't hate Israelis, but we hate what they are doing to us. My name is Marwan Harb. I'm a Christian living in Palestine, Bethlehem. When I hear that Christians in the West are helping Israel, thinking that they are helping Christians in Palestine, I think they're mistaken. Israel is who to blame. They took everything, man. They took all your life since you were a child.
There's understanding between Christians and Muslims that live here. There's a lot of differences as well.
And who care about us, the Muslim, Muslim Palestinian? They care more than the Christian in the world. So our brother, they are the Palestinian Muslim, not the Christian in the world.
I tell my brothers and sisters from other nations, Christians, I tell them to support us. My name is Sandy Kumsiya. I'm a Christian Palestinian. We are here in Bethlehem. It's really sad here.
What happens to anyone who speak against the Israeli government here? If they will notice that there's someone might make a threat for them, they will come in less than 10 minutes and take him away and will be in jail.
Some of the most basic rights, human rights, are not given to us.
We have a problem with the government and the rules they set.
Freedom of movement, freedom of speech, just freedom in general. We don't have it.
And this is it, the separation barrier, also known as the apartheid wall. It separates Bethlehem and the occupied West Bank from Jerusalem, meaning that for Christians to visit their holy sites, they need to go through an Israeli checkpoint and get Israel's permission.
Basically, you're not allowed to breathe unless you take their permission.
And they control how much water we get.
So we get the water like 1 day in the month. So this is a big problem. No one know about that and no one care about that.
What I think of the U.S. recognizing Israel, Jerusalem, that the capital of Israel.
هذا غلط كبير. ترامب ما له حق يعطي إسرائيل دولة.
They can claim it the capital of China if they want. Doesn't make any difference to us.
لأنه القدس عاصمة فلسطين.
We want peace, of course we want peace, but we want balanced peace and fair peace.
Imagine that. But the Zionists do not care. They will conquer all.
May 14th, 1948, 4 p.m. Tel Aviv. On a small podium stands a determined Zionist leader before a hastily convened gathering, reading out a proclamation which would change the course of history. This is how the State of Israel was born. First, a bit of background. At the end of World War I, the Allied powers gained control over the Middle East, including the land of Israel. The League of Nations recognized the historical connection of the Jewish people to their land and granted Great Britain a mandate to help them reconstitute a national home. However, Arab riots and geopolitical considerations led to a series of British restrictions on Jewish development and immigration. Even ships, including displaced children and Holocaust survivors, were sent back to Europe. Jewish resistance grew as well. By 1947, the ball was back in the United Nations Court, where a majority of the nations decided on November 29th, after a tense vote, to divide the land into a Jewish and an Arab state. The Jews rejoiced. The local Arab population, well, they launched a war throughout the country. May 15th, 1948 was the date the British mandate officially ended, the date the Jewish state was to be declared, and the date 5 regular Arab armies planned a coordinated attack to annihilate the newborn state. On May 12th, David Ben-Gurion convened the People's Council. The atmosphere was grave. Moshe Sharet reported that the Americans are demanding a postponement of the declaration, or else they would not help Israel against the United Arab invasion. Golda Meir reported that King Abdullah had retracted his original agreement and will join the attack. Military leaders expressed serious doubts about the ability of the small Jewish community to withstand 5 regular Arab armies.
Okay, let me pause. Hey, Scott, there's a big difference in anti-Zionism and anti-Semitic, whatever. None of us are against the Jews. This is not against the Jews show. This is against radicalized people that are Zionist. Okay, there's a big difference. So you must have just popped in here, but so this is about the Zionist movement, which will fall for the Antichrist and the beast system that's coming soon. I pray for all Jews, all people on this flat plane of existence to find Jesus, and the Zionists want nothing to do with Jesus. That's what this is about.
Armies equipped with European weaponry. But somehow, after 13 hours of deliberations, Ben-Gurion succeeds in swaying the balance against the American demand. And on Friday, May 14th, in the presence of local Jewish leaders, he declares the establishment of the State of Israel. The proclamation, which was inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, asserted the historical and moral rights of the Jewish people in its historic homeland, and defined Israel as a Jewish democratic state based on equal rights, freedom, and justice. The declaration ended with a call on Jews to return home and extended a hand for peace towards the local Arab population and neighboring Arab countries. The Arab invasion was immediate and lasted for over a year. Close to 50% of Israel's small fighting force were survivors of the Nazi death camps who vowed never again. 1 out of every 100 Jews living in Israel died in the fighting. But by the end of the war, the small Jewish state had emerged victorious as an independent nation in its homeland for the first time in 2,000 years.
Zionism has hijacked Judaism, like the other guy said. Now here's another one we're going to watch on Zionism.
Influence Israeli politics. The term Zion is associated with the city of Jerusalem. The land of Israel has always been sacred, and it has inspired countless pilgrimages for displaced seeking the return to Zion. Around the dawn of the 20th century, immigration to the land of Israel was especially popular because of a growing Zionist political movement. This modern Zionism created by Theodore Herzl centered around the belief that all Jews belong to a single nation and that they should establish a sovereign state to return to. Herzl published a pamphlet on the subject known in English as The Jewish State, and then organized the first World Zionist Congress in 1897 to discuss homeland options. During the next few decades, Jewish states were proposed in places like Alaska and Uganda, but Jerusalem and the Palestine area was the area that held the most significance for Jews. In 1917, Britain okayed a Jewish state in Palestine, and after the Holocaust, many other Western countries supported it as well. The State of Israel gained its independence in 1948. After the establishment of the Israeli government, the World Zionist Congress lost some of its power, but it is still around today as part of the World Zionist Organization. With millions of dollars.
World Zionist Organization. All right, we're going to stop there real quick and pull something up here. Okay. The Zionist Congress. Right here, World Zionist Congress was established in 1897 by, who we've already seen, Theodor Herzl, as the supreme organ of the Zionist organization and its legislative authority. Legislate. Oh, good grief. You know what I'm trying to say. Oh, all right. In 1960, the names were changed to World Zionist Congress and World Zionist Organization, respectively. All right. So, the 38th Zionist Congress 2020 will begin on Tuesday, October 20th, and ends on Thursday, October 22nd. Imagine that, 38. I had to look up 38 real quick. Of course, you know what 3 and 11 make is 11. All right, but anyway, check this out. 38 angel. Where is it? Hang on, bear with me. Okay, angel number 38 means bad luck is coming for some. And in the Bible, 38 symbolizes punishment. So imagine that, if you will. Put that together with your little prophecy pieces of the puzzle. So, yeah. 38 is made up of two powerful angel numbers, 3 and 8. Yep. Number is also about relationships. I know what relationship I count on. That with my Creator. So, yeah. Zionist Congress, American Zionist Movement. Yep. The Zionists, are just another group of evil elite that want to rule the world, unfortunately, and they're using religion, to make that happen. So if you don't know anything about the Noahide laws, I suggest you look them up because they're being implemented worldwide to control and enslave everyone, and it'll be illegal to be a follower of Christ. Christ is considered an idol to them, and you will have your head chopped off for believing in Christ under the Zionism rule that is coming.
In their budget, they work alongside the Israeli government to encourage Jewish settlement in Palestine and Jewish national sentiment through education. How does Zionism affect modern Israel? Well, since the early 1900s, many different forms of cultural Zionism have permeated the country. According to a study by the Israel Democracy Institute, almost half of Jews reportedly view themselves as affiliated with religious Zionism, which is the idea that original Jewish...
that they're almost split evenly, that half of the Jews, 45% of them are Zionists or support it, consider themselves it, yeah.
Traditions should be preserved, and Jews should have a sovereign state in the Holy Land. However, many Palestinians call this area home too, and they resent the influx of Jewish immigrants there. So although Zionism has given a homeland and safe haven to a long oppressed community, it has also flared territorial tempers in the Middle East and contributed to the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For a more in-depth look into settlements in the West Bank and how that's affecting politics in the region, check out this video from AJ+.
But religion aside, the Israeli government also encourages settlement by offering lower tax rates, subsidized housing, and easier loans.
And thank you for watching.
Oh, how nice. Oh, well. Yes, the Noahide laws. Yes, Scott. That is what the Zionists support. That is what the Zionists are putting in place everywhere. I love the Jews, the Jews that love Christ and respect God, the Creator. But these people have hijacked, Israel with their stuff, and it's I have to speak up against it. Just like No More News does, and just like Israeli News Live, or what is it? Israeli News Live, I think it is. Ben and his wife over there. Yeah, they'll tell you about the Zionists too. And I should have prepared some of their stuff. I was going to share some of their stuff today, but I took a nap and woke up right before the show was supposed to start, so I couldn't get everything together. But anyway, this is the 38th World Zionist Congress election. Blah 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 blah. Let's check out what this is saying here. Oh, your voice synergy. I guess there is no video. All right. Well, anyway, what I want to show y'all too. Let's see. We might as well just pull up real quick. Come on, slow. And I'm having a problem with my computer. It says activate Windows. Go to settings to activate Windows. And yeah, so I don't know. I might have a virus or something going on with that. Never seen that before. I restarted my computer and it went away for a little bit, but it's back. It's like right here on my screen, no matter what. Activate Windows. And I try to activate Windows and it says it can't. So there's that. Oh, I can't wait to get back to this channel. That we're on Tommy Tell the Truth 2 right now, and I can't go live on Tommy Tell the Truth until November 8th. Whew, that's still a good little ways away, unfortunately. But I'm still trying to get to 1,000 on here. I'm not far from 1,000 subscribers on it, and so hopefully I can get back on there and continue to build my little channel up and spread the truth as I know it. So here we go. So yeah, here's No More News, talking about the Noahide laws. Here's a guy talking about, let's see, what are the 7 Noahide laws? I recently heard a teaching that Orthodox Jews are secretly controlling the New World Order. Okay, so that'd be interesting to see what this guy's going to say, if he's for it or against it. Let's check this out real quick. We're not going to watch the whole thing, I don't think. And look, he's already got the globe there. It's not a globe. Scott.
I'm J.K. McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for future teachings and updates. What are the 7 Noahide laws? A new teaching circulating online proposes that Orthodox Jews are secretly controlling the New World Order, and that they will impose the Noahide laws to get people to only worship God proper, and that those who worship Yeshua the Messiah will be put to death. The following is a brief description of Noahides as provided by the Dictionary of Judaism in the Biblical period. Noahides are non-Jews who observe the 7 laws that apply to the descendants of Noah, namely all peoples. According to rabbinic authorities, these include the following prohibitions: idolatry, adultery and incest, bloodshed, blasphemy, robbery, social injustice, and eating the flesh of a limb cut from a living animal. Tosefta Avodah Zarah 8:4-8.
And so there you go right there. These are being implemented, these laws around this, and they certainly will be during the beast system, during the Antichrist ruling, in the near future, will be, enforced. Yep, and anyone that doesn't go along with it is subject to being killed.
Today's Messianic community has various opinions as they relate to what are often considered to be the Noahide laws. Some think that the Noahide laws form the basis of the apostolic decree of Acts 15, 20, and 29, whereas others think that the Noahide laws, while surely useful principles to be followed by all followers of Israel's God, were the product of post-Second Temple Judaism. In a great deal of historic Jewish thought, while the Torah proper is widely concluded to only be applicable to ethnic Israelites and proselytes to Judaism, the nations at large are thought to only have to really follow 7 precepts affecting the Bnei Noach, or children of Noah, derived from Genesis 9. Aside from many finer details, it is safe to say that today's broad Messianic community expects that non-Jewish believers in Israel's Messiah observe far more principles from Moses' teaching than just the Noahide laws.
But they're going to focus on them and implement them and enforce them. All right, I'm not going to sit through this. But anyway, so I hope I've introduced you to Zionism and a little bit about the Noahide laws, of course, because it is a big part of that. I encourage you to do your homework on the Noahide laws and stand up against them. And, definitely you don't want your state to implement all 7 of them. We don't want the U.S. to support them, but it is what it is. It is what's coming down the line. But I think we should definitely stand up and speak up against them and not support them, just like we don't support any of the beast system agenda, the New World Order, One World Order agenda that is being implemented. Boy, you can't even find one that links to no more news. Somebody else had uploaded that video, but it wasn't from No More News. No to the Noahide laws. That's a channel. I like that. Let's check that out. The channel. No to the Noahide laws. I can't stand when people have a video that starts automatically when you go to their channel. Oh, that's annoying. So they've been gone for 5 years, I guess. That's great. Maybe they haven't started another channel or something, but you know what? It's a touchy subject. People don't like to be looked Jew, and I don't want to be looked at anti-Jew neither. But I am anti-evil governments and evil religions, or those that have been hijacked by evil people. So yeah, there's that. No to the Noahide laws. I'm a contrarian. I don't know. Whatever. Since March 26, 1991, here in the United States, HJR 10214 public law has made the AKA Noahide laws as law of the land. The treasonous vipers from the abyss have been given this nation over to these anti-Jesus vipers of the Talmud. It is our duty to force all mankind to accept 7 Noahide laws, and if not, they will be killed. That was said by Rabbi somebody, October 6, 2004. Oh, Ginsburg. His last name was Ginsburg. Rabbi Ginsburg. Okay, I guess, or I don't know, whatever. Isn't that nice? Yeah. So, punishment for breaking any of the 7 Noahide laws is death by decapitation. It's maybe not right at first, which is now, but at some point, yes, they will use it. You better believe it. When we're deep into the tribulation period, they will cut off the heads of anybody that refuses 100% to take the mark of the beast and follow the beast laws, like the Noahide laws. Alrighty then. Let's see where we're at in the chat, and I've probably got a few more things to share. So what's going on? Brian's back in the chat. He says, I'm back making food but listening. Thomas Knight says, NASA BS sub Bell Tommy tell the truth too. Yes, splashdown landing. Let's see. Tommy was a strike. BS strike takedown. Yes. I know. NASA hates me, but NASA hates the truth. NASA hates to tell the truth, because I honestly, I've never heard the truth from them. Even when I asked NASA years ago in a Q&A with NASA, I said, why haven't we gone back to the moon? And this was like when I was a kid, okay, and not or a young teenager, and their response was, of course, that the Van Allen belts. Well, if the moon, now they've said the moon is in our own atmosphere, so the only way they've gone to the moon is if it is in our own atmosphere and not beyond the Van Allen belts, because they can't get past them. They can't get past the firmament, and they've tried to blow that up, but who knows? Maybe they will have some success at some point blowing that up and getting out of here, but there'll be consequences and God's wrath to deal with. So what's up, Love Trail? Voynich, Jay, everybody, David Reif, welcome. If you're still in here. Have you talked about the rabbi that guarantees their Messiah will be here this time next year? Oh no, let me just say this. They're talking about, who was it? Let me think. Somebody just said that they're expecting to announce who their Messiah is in the next week or two or month or two, apparently. So that's very interesting. These guys have already, and I've heard that they think it's either Jared Kushner or somebody, maybe even Donald Trump or whatever. But I certainly think it's going to be somebody who's Jewish or had maybe even, I don't know, maybe just somebody that has converted to Judaism. Excuse me. All right. Anyway, so yeah, that's going to be quite interesting. In the last couple of days, I've actually even thought about as crazy as it sounds, because it seems like there's so much proof to say that we're not in the tribulation period yet. But there was a brief time where my tribulation period was 2015 to the 2022, which is, would make it right in play, of course, now. And but then I did more searching and stuff, and it seemed more logical that 2021 through 2028 is the last seven, because the Bible alludes to Israel being strong and and staying in power for 80 years. And so in 2028, Israel will be 80 years old, and I think that's the end of them at that point. The Bible alludes that they will be a nation again for 70 to 80 years, if they're strong, and they are strong. And we're in the 70s now, obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I just want to be on the right side of this thing. I love everyone. I don't care what color you are, what background you have. If you've come to know God and Jesus, and and you love the truth, and you spread the truth, and you stand up against evil, then you're my friend, you're my brother, sister. And and I appreciate everyone who at this time, in this age, this late hour, that appreciates and seeks and spreads the truth. And I know we don't all have everything figured out, but let me tell you, I don't come on here unless I do my homework and I take it to God. And I don't want to spread false information about anybody or group. I definitely know that God wants us to stand up and speak up against the Zionist movement, the New World Order movement, the One World Order. Now, I know that the Bible says we're supposed to obey our governments, but see, all that is out the window when you're in the end times. We're at the end of the church age, folks, and so we're at the end of one age, and we're in a transitional period right now of the entering the new age, and so anything is possible. Also, and God is allowing man to do whatever he wants, and use powers that are out there available, and it's all about what intentions you have, and people that are loyal to Satan are using powers to make changes and to advance the New World Order agenda, the beast system agenda. And we're seeing that they are not going to stop what they're doing. The vaccines will be voodoo. They will be definitely toxic, and will lead to the beast, mark of the beast. It doesn't mean that the shot itself is the mark of the beast. That's too easy. It will be, at some point, the verification of having that vaccine. Just like they tried to do with the mask too, by saying you can't come in here, you can't buy and sell without a mask. How dare you? Most of us have refused the mask. I've only had to wear one time to get in the courthouse for 30 minutes. So I have not put on a mask before or since that court date. I've been in many stores. I just walk in right any of them now, and I right past the signs that say you're required to, and right past the people selling you, hey, you need a mask, because I'm not going to roll over. I'm not going to bend over, and I'm not going to be be silenced. Even if YouTube takes down this channel, then I will find a way to get, my testimony and what the Holy Spirit, what God has put on me to put out there. I always appreciate you guys being, here, and you make coming back, very inviting and exciting. And I know that you love to obey the government, Brian, and you love Trump, but I can't do it. Sorry. Oh goodness. Has obey your government always been in there, Tommy? I think for me it has been. Yes, I pretty much, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't. See, that was one of those things that was changed by King James, because he's the one that wanted the people to serve him, and yeah, just yeah, that's where all that started too. But I have not mask. Yeah, for me, the mask has been the line in the sand. I did wear it to get into the courthouse because they had the power to put me in jail if I didn't, and I just didn't want to go to jail. Not that I won't, and I did think about that very hard, long too. I'm not scared of jail, but at the moment I was not ready to go to jail over a mask. So anyway, all right. Yeah, let's see what else I wanted to share, and and then we'll go on from there. Maybe I'll even have somebody join me for a little bit. My daughter and grandson are not here right now, so I've got the house to myself. Normally, when they're here, you'll hear their TV, in the background. Yeah, there's a TV in my house now that my daughter moved in. I didn't have a TV in here. I did have a broken or an old one that sat, in the house for a long time, but I never used it, and I got rid of that. And then my daughter moves in and brings in a TV. It's like, but anyway, so I did pull up this guy who was the former president of Israel. Oh yeah, Shame, whatever Shame, yeah, Shame Wiseman, was a Zionist leader and an Israeli statesman who served as president of the Zionist organization and later as the first president of Israel. He was elected on February 16th, 1949, and served until his death in 1952. Excuse me. La 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 la. I don't remember why I had this pulled up. I guess I was just looking. Let's see. And here's what. Here, let me just play that quick.
Zionism.
Zionism, a movement for originally the reestablishment and now the development and protection of Jewish nation in what is now Israel. It was established as a political organization in 1897 under Theodore Herzl or whatever, and was later led by that guy, Shame Wiseman. Okay. Are all Jews Zionists? No, they are not. Let's just see what they say, though. But as we learned in one of the videos, that about almost half of the Jews are Zionists. The other half are hopefully gonna, if not already, believe in Jesus and not fall for the false Christ, Antichrist. Zionism is about the pursuit of an independent Jewish state. The word is derived from Zion, a hill near the city of Jerusalem, but nowhere near all Jews live in Israel, and not all inhabitants of Israel are Jewish. The birth of the state of Israel, which we've already learned about. Let's see. Out of the population of more than 300 million, the 6 million Jews in the United States are but a small minority in Israel. On the other hand, almost 80% of the population is Jewish. The difference between Zionists, Jews, and Israelis. Back to the question. So a Zionist is someone who strives for an independent Jewish state. To many religious Jews, Israel is the promised land, but many non-religious Jews too value the fact that there is a country where Jews can live in freedom and safety. Nowadays, the word Zionist is often used as a swear word, a negative label. Many Palestinians and supporters of the Palestinian cause no longer distinguish between the word Jew, Israeli, and Zionists. But I do. I know there's a difference. Just saying that. This is not correct, yes. Most Jews do not live in Israel. Not every inhabitant of Israel is Jewish. There's also many non-Jews living in Israel, and not all Jewish Israelis are settlers who want to conquer more and more Palestinian land. The vast majority of Jews believe the state of Israel should continue to exist, but many Jews, both living in Israel and elsewhere, are in favor of a Palestinian state alongside Israel as a possible solution to the conflict. But we do know when that happens, which is coming too, they're already reaching peace deals that are going to lead to the actual 7-year peace deal that the Antichrist will make and break with these people. So it's coming. Let's see. To cut a long story short, although many Jews identify with Zionism, there are still many different points of view. That is reason enough to not mix up words. Mix up the words Jew, Israelis, and Zionists. And that's all they got to say. Wow. Okay. Huh. I expected there to be more about it, but guess not. We had a couple nice days after the storm, and now it's ucky again. But Florida does have crazy, wacky weather like that. All right. Well, like I said, I hope I've introduced you to Zionism and the dangers of it. Hey, Fizzy Pop, another one. The trolls have copied his channel. Tell me, tell the truth, it's fake. Brian Staley account in here. You should ban it. You're funny. Always good to see you, Fizzy Pop. Yep. And this is my first show in I think a week or so. And of course, I had to deal with Hurricane Sally, Mustang Sally. And yeah, Brian, we know you're a weirdo. I think we all are a little weird, peculiar, you could say. My grandson probably thinks I'm a little weird, all the strange noises and meowing I do and stuff to entertain him. Look, I even bought these, I can't believe I'm going to show you these, but I bought these little finger puppets to entertain my grandson with. I can't believe I paid $5 for these things. So basically $1 a piece. But anyway, I'm just going to show you a couple of them here. Yeah, finger puppets for my little 4-month-old grandson. Okay, anyway. Is it 4:20 yet? No, it's 4:04 here. So, what do we got going on? Let's see. What else have we not shared yet? We shared that. And all right. Well, we have the Canary Mission. So the Canary Mission documents people and groups that promote hatred of USA, Israel, and Jews. We investigate hatred across the North American political spectrum, including far right, far left, and anti-Israel activists. And Brian Staveley's on here. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, I'm sure that No More News is on here. The dude from that, and probably even Israeli News Live. I don't know, but anyway, I thought this was kind of interesting here. That yeah, students, professionals, professors, and organizations. So, oops. So this lady found her way onto the Canary Mission, and her name is Jerry Jacobs Aspenleiter, and says she's a professional, whatever. And see, it says overview: Sherry Jacobs Aspenleiter has spread anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel on Facebook. She promoted the 9/11 Truth Movement and blamed Zionists for the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center. Adherents of the 9/11 Truth Movement dispute that Al-Qaeda terrorists carried out the September 11, 2000 terror attacks and claim that United States government insiders played a part in the attacks. As of February 2020, Aspenleiter's LinkedIn page said she was a property manager at a career solutions. Since okay, whatever. As of the same date, Aspenleiter's Facebook page, she said she manages the Facebook page Tweet Trump Truth Tuesday. Oh, she's a Trumper. All right, but anyway, this is what they're doing. They're making her a Zionist. They're saying that because she's a Zionist, she's an anti-Jew and anti-Semitic. So on August 16th, 2019, Espenleiter wrote on Facebook, Zionists blew up New York on 9/11, proven over and over. They stayed in charge of the U.S. and the minds of Americans, brainwashed to support the criminals while they slave to tend 12 million each day to Israel to pay for their free healthcare, college, and genocide of Palestine, and wars that make America less safe and hated worldwide. See, she's not saying that Jews are doing this. She's saying Zionists are doing it. So, I mean, you can't call her anti-Jew. You can't call me anti-Jew for just pointing out what a group of people, a political group at that, are doing worldwide, mind you. I mean, let's just break it down too, because Mossad is certainly part of it, because they've got their hand in more things than even the CIA, who we know is crooked and mostly doing evil. So it's ridiculous, man. Well, what people put up with and support because of their ignorance. So many Christians support Zionism, including my own father. Ooh, he tried to get me to support Zionism, and he thinks that Netanyahu is so godly and such a godly man. Give me a break. Oh my goodness. All right. Anyway, so there's that. Don't find yourself on the Canary Mission, Brian, or me, or any of y'all. So political Zionism is an anti-Semitic movement. Yeah, if anything's anti-Semitic, it is the political Zionism. Yes, indeed. No doubt about it. It's anti-Semitic, anti-Judaism, anti-Christian, anti-Islamic political movement with an evil agenda. No doubt about it, folks. So do your own homework. Take it to God. Take it to prayer, and you'll see that there's something wrong with the Zionists and the Noahide laws that they are trying to implement worldwide, and they will have success in doing, unfortunately, because that's the way the story plays out. But we will resist. We know what these laws are trying, these people are trying to do, and that is further the beast system, further implement it for the Antichrist. All right. Well, I think we got through everything I wanted to share. Let me play a song or two, and then at 4:20 I'm going to medicate, and then maybe I don't know, we'll go from there. Maybe somebody can join me if they have any thoughts on this subject or whatever, and if not, I might just end this and come back, later with something else. I don't know, who knows? But I'd like to hang out with you people. It's been a little while, and I appreciate every single one of you. And it is 9/20/2020. Time is flying by, man. This year, even with the COVID crap, it is just unbelievably flying by. All right, yes. Hang in there for some music. Do, 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 do. Come on. Not working. I missed my channel. 3 weeks ago was my last upload, but my last live show was, jeez, probably that one there a month ago, I guess. Oh no, that one a month ago, yeah. I uploaded that one. Damn ass. That went down the wrong pipe. Pure poppycock. Come on, you gonna hit us with some more ads? Really? Thank you, YouTube. Not. Jeez. Slow motion.
We're like watchmen, Patrolling the towers, we seek to expose those abusing their powers. All the lost men, sleeper cells in the sanctums who hate what is truth, catapulting deceptions, invasions, like barbarian pagans embracing their sin, behaving like cavemen, persuaded by counterfeit interpretations and built on a mountain of faulty foundation. They fire their arrows of flame by the thousands and move like a hide without name or announcement, like spiders with legs and appendages branching in so many ways. It seems endless. Examine the sections of web and the nest that's expanding and fanning the flames of the evil they're planning. Outlandish assumptions and biased conclusions immersed in a world full of lies and delusions. What you do if you pull back the curtain and saw who's controlling the scenes? Are you certain your version of truth is not an illusion of hip-hop and cock propaganda confusion? What would you do if you pull back the curtain and saw who's controlling the scenes? Are you certain your version of truth is not an illusion of hip-hop and cock propaganda confusion? Examine and study the entire picture and every ingredient inside the mixture. Then ask yourself, which of the sides are you choosing? Have you bought into lies or the things you're assuming? What type of role in the game are you playing? And can you explain anything that you're claiming? What's fact from fiction? Is the division of light from the darkness? Make your decision. If you have wisdom, then make it your mission to seek out the truth, improve your condition. Without a foundation, what's
say?
your solution of throwing fish out of water like sushi? Assuming you're certain of something uncertain, not even certainly sure you're a person. If life's an illusion that cannot be proven, then why would you trust your own mind for solutions? What would you do if you pull back the curtain and saw who's controlling the scenes? Are you certain your version of truth is not an illusion of hip-hop and cock propaganda confusion? What would you do if you pull back the curtain and saw who's controlling the scenes? Are you certain your version of truth is not an illusion of hip-hop and cock propaganda confusion? In conclusion, there's numerous thoughts and opinions. Some are confusing and some seem convincing. Our mission should be one that seeks revelation, investigate, innovate, lead explorations. Use every tool, use every science. Be scrupulous, never compliant. Defiant, excited, defiant, and uncover conundrums, enigmas, and quandaries. Hoaxes, debunk them. Have questions, ask them. See problems solved. Them troubleshoot, figure it out, overcome. Life could be full of unsolvable riddles, but perhaps there are reasons for all the struggle.
Hardly got you. And this is what is happening. Yes, you gotta love it. Somebody doesn't like what I'm talking about. I guess we're with the Destiny Lab. Let's see. Can we pull up nomorenews.org? They certainly don't like this guy. Like it's loading. Have you ever gotten this down here, Brian? If you're still here, it says, dadgummit, trying to get some. It says activate Windows. Go to settings to activate Windows. Like my Windows are not activated. How am I using them right now? It's crazy. I've never seen that on the screen before today. So here's No More News, folks. I'm going to mark it. Rabbi says Gentiles are surrounded by demons. And I say the Zionists are surrounded by demons, definitely. But all people are either surrounded by, good angels or fallen angels. Do-do-do-do. That was from the 14th. And what else he's got here? The latest. Yeah, that was his latest videos. Huh. Esau is going extinct. Black Queen Plain Rant. The Abraham Accord on No More News Live. And that's the peace deal that they're trying to get going right now, or did get going. Israel Terror and 9/11 presentation by Christopher Bolin. Do you know who he is, Brian? Christopher Bolin, talking about 9/11. What's up, Rick? What's up, Busy Thomas? I guess we lost Brian, so I don't know. He's been in and out. Maybe not. All right. Well, let's see here. I'm interested in the 9/11 one. I'm gonna just peek at that. I might watch it later. Yeah, Adam Green. That's who No More News is. Yeah, that's an hour long. Silverstein got the Twin Tower lease through fellow Zionist agent Lou Eisenberg, or Elsenberg, I can't see, yeah, Eisenberg, chairman of the Port Authority. Fellow Zionist, yeah. Huh, the Zionist connection. Yeah, this is probably a good little watch here.
And author of Solving 9/11 set of books, including his latest, The War on Terror, The Plot to Rule the Middle East. Chris has a history degree from UC Santa Cruz with a focus on Israel and Palestine. He's written extensively
It's
on the Middle
4:20
East,
here,
vote
by the way.
fraud, depleted uranium dangers, and the history and geopolitics of the 9/11 terror attacks. Chris joins us tonight as he continues to speak about 9/11 and tours across Europe and America. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Christopher Bolin.
Thanks. Okay. Very good. It's nice to be here. Nice to see all these friendly people that I've met before. Pleasure to be back here. I'm not really on a tour this year. I was invited to speak at a USS Liberty event in Texas yesterday, and then I was invited by San Diego Truth Group, Elise and Ted and my friends to come and speak here. So this presentation is not so much about the details of September 11th. This presentation is about 17 years of deception. 9/11 is going to be the 17th anniversary coming up this week. And it's also 17 years of war. For 17 years, this country's been at war. And most people in this country are unaware of what this country, our United States, is doing in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Yemen, in Mali, in many countries. So what happened is that 9/11 was done to trick us into war.
Yep.
And if you understand, you need to understand what this war is all about. What is the real strategic plan that the United States, for example, Syria. Right now, the United States is on the verge of war with Russia in Syria. It's heating up quite quickly there. The United States is involved in occupying the eastern third of the country. And Russia and Syria says the Americans have to leave. But the United States is, so why are U.S. troops occupying Syria, a nation where there is no U.S. interest whatsoever? Now, what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is what is the real strategic plan and who this plan serves. This is my previous protest at the Oscars. about solving 9/11 ends the war. What that means is when you understand the truth about 9/11, the war is over for you. You will understand that the war is a hoax, is a lie. My background is I was an investigative journalist in Washington, D.C. when 9/11 happened. I have a BA in history. Israel and Palestine was my focus. I've written the Solving 9/11 set of books, and The War on Terror, The Plot to Rule the Middle East. I have a lot of those little books with me left over from Texas, so if you'd like to get a copy of the book, whatever donation you want to give, take a copy home with you. It's a small book. It's very important. I made it to be small and concise because it's a very important message. Americans have to understand what the war on terror is all about. It's not at all about fighting terrorism. It's actually using terrorism to wage war against independent countries. So the Solving 9/11 set of books investigate various aspects of the terror atrocity. And my focus has always been from the beginning, who is behind 9/11 and why was it done? This is the large book, the original articles, contains my articles for the first 12 years I was working as a journalist on 9/11. Now, the war on terror was a policy coup by deception. It was blamed on Muslims in order to initiate the war on terror. Behind the war on terror is a covert plan to redraw the map of the Middle East, Iraq, Syria, to break these countries up into fragments. Understanding the origin of this plan is crucial to comprehending the deception that has changed our world. Both 9/11 and the war on terror have a common origin. They were both conceived by Israeli military intelligence. That's not Mossad, that's Aman, A-M-A-N. In the 1970s, under the leadership of Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin was the leader of Israel in 1977. And when Begin came to power, that's when the real old terrorists took power in Israel. Menachem Begin is known as the father of terrorism. This is Menachem Begin. He was born in Russia, came to Palestine in 42, became the leader of the Irgun in 44, bombed the King David Hotel in Jerusalem in 46, committed the Deir Yassin massacre in 48, redraw the map of the entire Palestinian village, Iraq, Syria, to break created the Likud party in 1973, became prime minister in 77, of this plan, and promptly invaded Lebanon in 1978. This is the emblem of the Irgun. This shows this larger territory called Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. And this is what they aspire to. They aspire to creating a state, the Likudniks, from the River Nile to the River Euphrates, and taking pieces of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq along the way. It's interesting to note that although Menachem Begin was the head of the Irgun, which is part of Vladimir Jabotinsky's Zionist movement, Benjamin Netanyahu's father, Bibi Netanyahu's father, Ben-Zion Netanyahu, was the executive director of the new Zionist movement when Jabotinsky died.
Can you imagine that?
Jabotinsky is the founder of this radical revisionist Zionism called the New Zionist Organization, founded in New York City.
Hang on 1 second, guys. Just wanting to go through the chat real quick.
Both 9/11 and the war on terror have a common origin.
Okay. Sorry about that.
City. Here's the father of terrorism. This is Menachem Begin and Bibi Netanyahu. And in 1974, a British journalist asked Mr. Begin, how does it feel in the light of all that's going on to be the father of terrorism in the Middle East? And Begin said, in the Middle East, he said, in all the world. So he put on himself the mantle of being the father of terrorism in all the world. So 9/11, we need a little bit more light than that. Oh. Okay. 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 9/11 was a false flag terror atrocity designed to instill fear and rage in the American population. in order to get public opinion to support the war on terror. The war on terror is a pre-planned Zionist war agenda to be waged under the pretext of fighting terrorism. So starting the war on terror was the reason why 9/11 was done. The war on terror itself is much older. So 9/11 was a policy coup in this country that brought us the global war on terror and a series of these disastrous and costly wars. This is from Iraq. They also call this war on terror, they call it the Long War. This is written by people who support the idea of fighting this war. The war on terror is the longest and most expensive war in US history, yet there is very little public resistance to it and no political debate on ending it. That's partly because there is no awareness in this country of what we've done in Iraq or Syria. For example, last summer we bombed Mosul and Raqqa, two very large cities, one in Syria, one in Iraq, and yet there were no pictures in the newspaper of what we were doing. None. Now this is what President Trump said a few months ago. He said, we have spent $7 trillion, trillion with a capital T, 7 trillion in the Middle East. You know what we have for it? Nothing, nothing. He's right. And this is from the man who wrote The Art of the Deal. So if this deal is so bad, as he says, we need to reverse this deal. We need to understand it, that this deal is plundering the wealth of this country. How it works is that the war on terror is not just the name of it's not just a clever name. It's a legal term for the authorization to use military force. What this means is that 2 days after 9/11, Congress passed a bill that gave the president the right to declare war in any place, in any country, against anybody who he thought was involved in 9/11 on his own determination. And these are some of the countries that where they have used this authorization to wage war. But of course, have these countries all been involved in 9/11? No, of course not. So it's a fraud. Here, the fraudulent war on terror is based on the official myth of 9/11. This gives you an example of how much money is being spent. We're spending $400 million per victim of terrorism in this country per year. $400 million per year per victim of terrorism. It's a fraud. The war on terror is an Israeli stratagem pushed by Netanyahu since 1979 to trick the United States into waging war against Israel's enemies.
Yep.
And George Bush, Donald Trump has supported this lie when he re-engaged in Afghanistan. He said in August of last year, he said that 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in our history, was planned and directed from Afghanistan because that country was ruled by a government that gave comfort and shelter to terrorists. So although he said that his instincts were against the war in Syria and Afghanistan, he supports the lie and supports the war. So the war goes on. This is Wesley Clark, who was running for president. He was a former general, a very high-ranking commander of American forces in Europe in the 1990s during the operation in Yugoslavia. And he said, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're an American, you ought to be concerned about the strategy of the United States in this region. What is our aim? What is our purpose? Why are we there? Why are Americans dying in this region? You can ask yourself that question. Why are Americans in Syria? Why are we in Afghanistan? Why are we in Iraq? Why? He said, what happened on September 11th is that we didn't have a strategy. We didn't have bipartisan agreement. We didn't have American understanding of it. And instead, we had a policy coup in this country. A coup, a policy coup. Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. So when he says we didn't have American understanding of it, he's implying that we had some other country interpreting 9/11 for us, which is correct. It was Israel. Here is the Defense Policy Board, 3 of the principal members of that, Paul Wolfowitz, Dov Zakheim, and Douglas Feith. Some of them are dual nationals. They're sitting at the table with the Israeli military chief of staff, Shaul Mofaz. This is in the Pentagon in January 2002.
A Zionist coup at
and what
the
they were discussing
Pentagon.
is what would be the American response to 9/11. And as Wesley Clark points out, he came across a memo. He was a very high-ranking officer. He was at the Pentagon after 9/11, and he saw Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz. And one of the generals called him in and said, "Sir, we've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This is 10 days after 9/11. He said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" "I don't know," he said. I came back a few weeks later. By that time, we were bombing Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" He said, "Sir, it's worse than that. We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran." Well, as you can see
who
from
they
that
want
list,
war with now,
6
Iran.
of those 7 countries have already been done, and we're threatening to make war with Iran any day. The sanctions and things, the economic sanctions that have been applied to Iran are a form of warfare.
Yep, sure are.
Now, what's happening here is that what's being applied is something called the Yinon Plan, the Israeli plan called Yinon, named after the author Oded Yinon. And this plan is an Israeli plan from a Likud strategist to break up the Arab states, starting with Iraq and Syria, into statelets, into small ethnic statelets. It's often called Balkanization because that's what they did to Yugoslavia. Break it into a section with the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Kurds. And that's what's been done. That's what's been done to Libya. That's what they're doing to Iraq. That's what they're trying to do in Syria. And what happened in Syria is they ran into an obstacle called Russia and Iran. And they've been thwarted. So this plan has been stymied by the presence of Russia. And they are really ticked off about that, which is why there's so much anti-Russian propaganda, because they're pushing for war to finish Syria, but also to have hostility with Russia and Iran. Now, this is Hillary Clinton in 2012. Hillary Clinton wrote in an email that the best way to help Israel is to use force in Syria to overthrow the government. This email proves that Obama and Clinton were seeking to overthrow the Syrian government, an elected government, in order to serve Israel. Now, this is a photograph from Syria near Damascus. This is the Palestinian camp. This photograph shows the Yarmouk camp. Now, today it's in ruins. It had a population of over 100,000 people. Today it has 200 left. The Yarmouk camp in Damascus lies in ruins, with hardly a single building that has not been destroyed or damaged. Almost all the Palestinian refugees who were there have now fled. This shows you how this war, in this incident, the Palestinian refugees were being targeted. This is a Palestinian camp. And what happened is ISIS infiltrated the camp. Then the war was waged against ISIS. And who got hurt? The Palestinians. ISIS is like a moving target. Wherever they put ISIS, then they go and attack. Same thing they did to Raqqa and Mosul. This is from Linda Hurd. She's a British expert on the Middle East. And she wrote this: "Is the United States waging Israel's wars?" She said, "There's one thing we do know. Oded Yinon's 1982 plan, the Zionist plan for the Middle East, is in large part taking shape. Is this coincidence? Was Yinon a psychic? Perhaps," she says, "alternatively, we in the West are victims of a long-held agenda, not of our making and without a doubt not in our interest." So we're spending all this money and fighting all this war and taking the food off American tables to fight a war for somebody else?
The Zionist plan for the Middle East. Lovely.
This is the plan. The Israeli plan is to conquer this area between Iraq and Egypt and call it Eretz Israel. This is the plan of the Likud. The Likud doesn't hide this. This is what Irgun wanted to do. This is what Netanyahu wants to do. They aspire to this. This is part of their megalomaniac plan. In order to do this, they foment strife between the various ethnic groups in these countries. And that's easy to do because there's Sunnis and Shiites and Christians and Jews and Kurds. So what they've done is that they increase the tension by doing things like car bombs and assassinations in order to get these groups to fight each other. And it says, this is from the Yinon plan: the dissolution of Syria and Iraq is Israel's primary target on the Eastern Front. The dissolution of the military power of these states serves as the primary short-term target. That's exactly what the United States has been doing for the last 17 years. Actually, of course, the war in in Iraq has been going on for now 27 years, having begun in 1991. And what the United States has also been involved in is supporting the Kurds in the north, so that they've tried to break away the Kurdish regions of these countries into separate countries called Kurdistan. It's important to note that in the northern part of Iraq, the Kurdish area, the major holder of the oil reserves in that area is a Rothschild company called Janel Energy. Now, this is what was going on last summer. This is in Mosul, Iraq. It's, I think, the second largest city in the country. It was pounded. The United States and Kurdish forces pounded this city for months and destroyed. This is the famous Mosque of Al-Nuri, destroyed in the battle. This is Raqqa. At the same time they were pounding Mosul, they were pounding Syria's Raqqa. At least half the city was totally destroyed. Now, this is destruction on a biblical level. This is the kind of thing you read about in the Old Testament, where they utterly destroy cities. Why is the United States destroying major cities in Iraq and Syria? What's the point? Why are we doing it? It's our tax dollars at work. They pounded this poor city with so many artillery. They wore out the artillery pieces, the American artillery pieces they were using. They were firing so relentlessly. This is from the northern part of Iraq. It's headed by a family named the Barzani family. That was the leader, Masoud Barzani, with the turban there in the lower left. His father was Mustafa Barzani. In the upper photos, you can see that his father was very close to Mossad. There he is, his father speaking to the head of the Mossad in 1966, I think it was. And here's Mr. Barzani going to Israel, meeting Moshe Dayan. This is his son, and this is what his son was trying to do. His son was trying to create an independent Kurdistan in northern Iraq. And when they had these rallies, you can see that the Israeli flag flies right alongside with the Kurdish flag, because this is an Israeli plan to break up Iraq and Syria by giving the Kurds their own state. So here's September 11th happened 17 years ago, and the media has imposed on us, the public, a false story, a narrative, that radical Islamic terrorists were to blame for 9/11. Now, if you accept that logic, if you accept the official story, you will be trapped. You will be trapped in their logic of war.
Right.
But if you understand that the 9/11 story is a lie, then you will understand that the war on terror is equally a fraud, and you'll be liberated from it. And that's what we have to do, is we have to liberate ourselves. We have to understand the source of this terrorism in order to liberate ourselves from this madness and this war. And we have to liberate the whole country. This has to be a popular movement. What they did is that after 9/11, on 9/11, they declared it an act of war. And this is a CIA paper, USA Today. You see here, it said they have 86% say attacks are acts of war. So in one day they had done a survey and give you this nice number that most people think is an act of war. Now, it's very important when you call it an act of war, because it no longer is a crime that can be investigated and tried. It becomes an act of war. And that gives the president the right to take action and to get justice by waging war, rather than having an investigation. Now, this is a quote from Larry Johnson, former deputy of counterterrorism. He's talking about how these Florida guys were not really who the hijackers were not really who they said they were at all. He said, "We don't have anything in history to compare with this. The only thing that comes close to it is a former Soviet intelligence operation." What he's saying is that the planning and the sophistication of the 9/11 plot was so complex that it was something like the Soviets would have dreamed of. I went to Germany after 9/11 because I realized it would be unsafe to be talking about writing articles about how this is all a lie when our country was going to war based on that lie. And I spoke to this man, former president of German intelligence, and he told me that the deathly precision and magnitude of planning behind 9/11 would have needed years of planning. He said such an operation would have required the fixed frame of a state intelligence organization. So what
Hey,
state
Bolt
are we
Gun,
talking
good to
about?
see you, bro.
What state intelligence organization is behind 9/11? Well, another one of his friends, Andreas von Bülow, another former German intelligence expert, told me right off the bat, I said, "Who do you think's behind it?" He said, "Mossad." And when I wrote that in my newspaper, he was a little bit shocked, because he said he had told the exact same thing to every German journalist, but they never wrote it in the papers. They never repeated that. That was not reported. So I'm going to point out some of the key Israeli connections to 9/11. When Israel was being created in the 1940s, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff did 13 papers to determine what would be the U.S. policy regarding the new state of Israel. And what they wrote in the 13th paper, they wrote that Zionist strategy, Israeli strategy, will seek to involve the U.S. in a continuously widening and deepening series of operations intended to secure maximum Jewish objectives. And they define what were those Jewish objectives. They say one was the expansion of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, into Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. The second is the establishment of Jewish military and economic hegemony over the entire Middle East. That's what's
And then the entire world.
Now, this is to give you just an idea of Israeli or Zionist terrorism prior to the State of Israel. In 1944, Lehi, that's also the Stern Gang, assassinated the British minister Lord Moyne in Egypt. He was in charge of the whole Middle Eastern area for Britain. In 46, they sent letter bombs to British officials, including the foreign minister. In 46, they bombed the King David Hotel, Irgun, killing 93 people. In 47, the Irgun placed bombs at the Colonial Office in London. In 47, Lehi sent letter bombs to the Truman White House.
Zionist terrorism.
Truman.
Nice.
In 48, Haganah and Irgun bombed the Semiramis Hotel in Jerusalem. And in 48, Irgun and Lehi massacred the entire village of Deir Yassin, a Palestinian village near Jerusalem. That's just what they did before. That's just a very short list. There's many more things. And this is the Jewish terrorists. When the Jewish terrorists bombed the King David Hotel, it was done by this man, Menachem Begin. He was in charge of the operation. And they blew up the hotel because that was the offices of the British intelligence, or the British headquarters for the military mandate of Palestine. Killed 93 people. A little bit after that, a few months after that, they bombed the British embassy in Rome. And then this man, his name is Yitzhak Shamir, he was in charge of Lehi, or the Stern Gang. They killed the United Nations mediator to Palestine, who was sent there when the war broke out to try and make peace.
Yeah, I'm still here, Bolt Gun.
But
It's a mess around here.
This is the New York Times. They say the Stern Group is blamed, and it was very clear that this was being done by Jewish terrorists, Zionist terrorists. Now, in 1948, then Menachem Begin came to New York City at the end of the year, and Einstein lived in New York, Albert Einstein, and he and 26 Jewish intellectuals wrote a letter to the New York Times protesting Menachem Begin. And one of the key parts of that letter said that the public avowals of Begin's party, the Irgun, what became the Likud, are no guide whatsoever to its actual character. Today they speak of freedom, democracy, and anti-imperialism, whereas until recently they openly preached the doctrine of the fascist state. It is in its actions that the terrorist party betrays its real character. From its past actions, we can judge what it may be expected to do in the future. That's exactly right. When Begin came to power in 1977, he began employing once again his tactic of terrorism. 77, they came to power. These are three of the triumvirate. That's Begin and Ariel Sharon and Yitzhak Shamir. Now, it's interesting that there's a book by an Israeli called Rise and Kill First that's a bestseller in the New York Times. And in that book, it reveals that this man, Chief of Staff Raphael Eitan, from 1979 to 1983, when Menachem Begin took power, this man ran a terrorist organization in Lebanon called the Front for the Liberation of Lebanon from Foreigners, in which they used car bombs and truck bombs to foment strife and war. They wanted to give a reason for Israel to get to war with the Palestinians in Lebanon and for the factions in Lebanon to fight each other. This is exactly what they did in Lebanon for those years and what they did in Iraq until recently.
Yep.
Car bombs in between Sunnis and Shiites and Kurds so that you get groups fighting each other.
Yep.
It's an Israeli specialty. This is the book. This is a little extract from the book. The aim was to create chaos.
Chaos. There you go. Control from chaos.
Without leaving an Israeli fingerprint. To give them the feeling they were constantly under attack and to instill them with a sense of insecurity. Now, that's what they did in Lebanon for 4 years. That's what they did in Iraq for 10 years. That's what they're doing to this country since 2001. Look at what happened after 2001. Remember the bombs in Bali. After 9/11, we had bombs in Bali, bombs in Madrid, bombs in London, bombs in everywhere. And that was they took their scare tactics and went global with it. And that's what they want to do with us. They want us to be in fear. That's what the terrorism is all about, is to make us afraid to allow them to do what they want to do with their wars. And, you know, in the final year of their little operation in Lebanon, they destroyed the Marine barracks in Beirut, killing 241 Marines. And there was one truck bomb Sunday morning, very early, came in, drove in, and blew up the barracks. And Caspar Weinberger, who was defense minister at the time, Secretary of Defense, said there was no knowledge, America has no knowledge who did the bombing. It was blamed on some little group called Islamic Jihad, which had no history, no past, no return address. You know, I surmise that this was another operation done by the Mossad. And the basis of that is that Victor Ostrovsky, in his book, By Way of Deception, he's an Israeli Mossadnik from Canada, he said that Mossad knew the specific time and location of the bombing, but only gave the United States general information, which was worthless. So Americans paid with their lives. And here are the Israeli terrorists of the 1950s. They're pretty famous men. This is Shimon Peres, and that's Moshe Dayan, and this is Pinhas Lavon. This photograph was taken just a few months after they were caught putting bombs in American and British buildings in Cairo. And this was another false flag operation. Going back to the 1950s, they wanted to bomb American libraries and films and theaters, what have you, in order to turn the American government and American people against the Arabs, especially specifically against Egypt. And here's Shimon Peres. Just after he did this, the prime minister of the country at the time was shocked. And he said that Shimon Peres shares the same ideology as Pinhas Lavon. He wants to frighten the West into supporting Israel's aims. This is the name of the game. This is what we still are at today. Shimon Peres was the foreign minister of Israel when 9/11 happened. They want to scare the American people into accepting the Israeli logic of war. So that we will then fight Israel's enemies because we're so frightened of them. Now, this is what we were speaking about yesterday in Texas. This is the attack on the USS Liberty. It happened in 1967 during the Six-Day War.
False flag attack.
And Israel mercilessly attacked this ship, killing 34 Americans, pounded the ship. And the communications between the pilots and the ground control went something like this at the crucial moment. They said, identify the ship. And the pilot said, it's American, it's American. Then the command came from it. And the Americans picked up as if it was a really Libyan message. Oh, Libya's saying, congratulations on the job well done. And they tricked the Americans into thinking, Libya did it, see? And Ronald Reagan went and bombed. So that's just an idea of some of the deception, how Israel operates to get us to attack their enemies. The war on terror, the evolution of an Israeli stratagem. A stratagem is a trick, a device to trick a nation, to trick people.
Yep.
In 1978, the Israeli super agent Arnon Milchan made his first film called Medusa Touch. The climactic scene is a Boeing passenger aircraft flying into the Pan Am building in New York. This is 1978. You see, what I'm trying to show is that the ideation, the planning of 9/11 and the war on terror all began at the same time in the late 1970s when Begin came to
Look at those Mandela-affected engines on that. That's crazy. We know they didn't look like that back then.
power. Here's the planning of the preparation for the film. This is the very first film that he made. This is a very famous film director, producer today. He made JFK and Brazil, Pretty Woman, films like that.
Imagine that.
Yeah, Fight Club, thank you. And here's the first film that he made, and this is, shows the scene of the plane flying into the building. And to give you an idea of his connections to the highest level of the Israeli military, here he is talking with Ezra Weitzman in 1978, the same year he made the film. This is Arnon Milchan. This is him more recently. He's a very high senior Israeli agent. He's a nuclear smuggler and a money launderer. What his basic function has been is he has been like the banker for Israel, for offshore bank accounts, for them to run their military intelligence operations. So he holds the funds to fund their operations abroad. And he was involved in the nuclear smuggling of triggers for nuclear bombs, 850 of them. His company is called Milco in California. And this man was working for him at the time. Netanyahu was his employee.
Wow.
And of course, when the indictment came out for this nuclear smuggling, the Treasury Department, I think it was, said that I can just tell you one thing he said, that Arnon Milchan is not named in the indictment. So his American employees went to jail, went into exile, but he was not even named in the indictment. And the FBI went to Israel and said, we would like to have those nuclear triggers back, please. The Israelis gave them half of them back. It shows you who's in power there. And here we have, this is a film that his business partner named Rupert Murdoch at News Corporation made in year 2000, aired on TV March 2001, in which a Boeing passenger plane is remotely hijacked and flown into the World Trade Center. At the very last minute, the pilots are able to avert a catastrophe. They just narrowly miss hitting the building. This was shown on Fox TV in March 2001.
Wow.
Milchan and Murdoch are business partners. They own TV companies together. So most likely this idea came from Mr. Milchan because it seemed to be his obsession. Here's the father of Israeli intelligence named Isser Harel, and he predicted 9/11 in 1979. He predicted it to this tall fellow here, Michael Evans. Here's with Menachem Begin. And Isser Harel predicted that Arab terrorists would attack the tallest buildings in New York City. He made this prediction, of course, 14 years before the first bombing and 22 years before 9/11. How
Wow.
amazingly prescient that the head of Israeli intelligence knew what Arabs would do 20 years down the road. This is what he said in 1979.
He would blame it on them.
Mr.
They would
Evans said,
blame
do
it
you
on
think
them.
terrorism will come to America? And if so, where and why? Harel said, I fear it will come to you in America. America has the power but not the will to fight terrorism. You see where they're thinking in 1979 already? The terrorists have the will but not the power to fight America, but that could all change with time. Arab oil money buys more than tents. As to the where, Harel continued, New York City is the symbol of freedom and capitalism. It's likely they will attack the Empire State Building, your tallest building, and a symbol of your power. So that prediction was made in 1979. So all of this goes back to 78, 79. They're planning the war on terror. They're planning 9/11. That's the ideation.
Imagine that.
Creating the idea. Now, what happened is that Netanyahu, this man here, he was working for Boston Consulting Group, a Rothschild company in Boston. In 1979, he went back to Israel, and with his father, he created something called the Netanyahu Institute, and they began promoting the war on terror. Their first conference was in 1979 in Jerusalem, called the International Conference on Terrorism. And he then began writing books, well, taking the speeches, for example, and putting them together in a book form. Terrorism, How the West Can Win, Fighting Terrorism. And in these books, Netanyahu puts forth his doctrine. The doctrine basically goes like this, that Israel is attacked by Arab terrorists simply because it's a Western state with Western values. Therefore, the real target is the West. Therefore, it's incumbent on the West to come to the Middle East to fight the bad terrorists because the real target is the West. Well, you know, it worked. It worked. However absurd it sounds, it worked very well. Now, if you're going to have a war on terrorism, you got to have a really good enemy, a very colorful, naughty, nasty enemy, because the average Muslim is not a good enemy. So they had to create something, and they started creating it in the 1980s in Pakistan, and it was the gang of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. And what happened is that Israeli military intelligence sent the men and the weapons to Pakistan. The Americans under Charlie Wilson and the Saudis paid for it all. We paid for it, CIA paid for it, Saudi Arabia paid. The Israelis collected the money, gave the weapons that they had taken from Beirut, from Lebanon, and the Israelis, who have plenty of Arabic-speaking agents, trained these people in terrorism. And one of the first Afghan Arabs was this man here, Osama bin Laden. And this operation began in 1983 when Ehud Barak, this man, was the head of Israeli military intelligence. This is Charlie Wilson, the congressman from Texas, who was behind the whole thing. You've seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War, read the book. And this is the man that they were funding, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, right here. What's interesting about this, most peculiar, is that the CIA and Saudi Arabia were funding the most anti-Western group out there. Not only that, this Gulbuddin Hekmatyar's group never had a successful battle with the Russians, and they were always stirring up dissent with other groups. But most importantly, they were anti-Western. Now, why would the CIA and Saudi Arabia be funding an anti-Western group? Because they were creating the foe for the coming war. And how it was being done? It was being done with this man, the head of the Mossad in Washington. His name is Zvi Rafia. He was managing Charlie Wilson. They were close friends, and he was like Charlie Wilson's mentor. And Rafia used Charlie Wilson's office as if it were his own. Here you see a quote from the book, Charlie Wilson's War. He said one of the staffers kept a list of people he needed to lobby. He would use the phones, give projects to the staff, and call on Charlie to intervene whenever he needed him. So this Israeli station chief from Mossad is using a congressman's office as if it were his own. And this is the first trainer for bin Laden. This is bin Laden's first trainer. His name is Ali Mohammed. What's interesting about this man is Ali Mohammed is a fluent Hebrew-speaking double agent. He's supposedly Egyptian, but he speaks fluent Hebrew. Well, where did he learn that? Well, he's one of these double agents, and he trained Osama bin Laden. He trained the guys that shot Rabbi Kahane. He was involved in setting up the operation in Egypt, or East Africa, where they blew up the embassies. He was involved in all this stuff. But what was eventually happened, he was finally caught, and he was put in federal penitentiary, where he vanished from without a trace. And the people that he created, the gang that he created, is these guys. And in 1994, they became Al-Qaeda, and the ones that spoke Pashto, the Afghans, became Taliban. So these were all the men that had been trained in terrorism and technology by the Israeli military intelligence. Then in 1987, Israeli Mossad tried to get security contract for the World Trade Center. And they sent this man to get it, the former head of Shin Bet, Avraham Shalom. And the company was called Atwell Security of Tel Aviv, and they got the contract from the Port Authority. It was a terrorism contract, a terrorism security contract for the World Trade Center. And what happened, though, is that the Port Authority discovered that Mr. Shalom Ben-Dor was using a fake name. They often Israelis use different names than they have. And they found that he was guilty of murder back in Israel, of killing a couple Palestinians with rocks, crushing their heads, and having approved of that operation. And the Port Authority tore up the contract. But had that contract not been torn up by the Port Authority, 9/11 would have happened in 1980s or so, which would have put us at a big disadvantage because we didn't have the internet. We only would have read about it in New York Times and Time Magazine, and we would be clueless about what really happened. The internet has been a big game changer for us. It's allowed us to communicate and to get information that we would not otherwise have gotten. Now, when Shalom Ben-Dor and Zvi Malkin, I have to explain who these guys are. They're high Mossad agents. They're very high Mossad agents. They're the guys that worked under Issa Harel. Remember the guy who made the prediction in '79? These were his lieutenants. These are the men who went to Argentina and kidnapped Eichmann. These are the men who were involved in smuggling plutonium from Pennsylvania to Israel for the nuclear bombs. So these are very high-level men. They came to America in the early 1980s, and Zvi Malkin, that guy, and Shalom Ben-Dor. And the company that they headed, Atwell Security, had been created by Shaul Eisenberg, who was Mr. Big, Israel's Mr. Big in China. That's another story, but you have to remember that name, Shaul Eisenberg. He was the biggest, like a James Bond mega criminal. So what happened when their contract was torn up by the Port Authority, they didn't leave, they didn't go back to Israel, they didn't call it quits. What they did is they went to work for some American Jews who had already inside track. These two men, Jules Kroll on the top and Maurice Greenberg. Maurice Greenberg is the guy that used to run AIG, which is the company that got the big bailout in 2008, 2009. He had the insurance company that had insured the banks. So this man, Kroll Associates, Kroll, had a company that in 1993 got the security contract for the World Trade Center after the first bombing. There was a bombing in the basement. Then his company had the security contract, and the Israeli guy was working for him. So the Israeli was using the American Jew as a Trojan horse to get into the operation that they wanted to get into. This man is also a key player in the 9/11 saga. He was involved. He was the special advisor to Bill Clinton. His name is Rahm Emanuel. He's the mayor of Chicago. This is the guy that ran the Clinton White House. For example, NAFTA. When Bill Clinton was elected in 1992, this guy got NAFTA through Congress in 1993, single-handedly. He's very nasty. He gives threats. He threatens people. He uses all kinds of ways to get people to do what he wants. He was also the first person appointed by Barack Obama, chief of staff. So you see, when Clinton was the president, a lot of the people were being put in position for the 9/11 saga to go into action. And therefore, he was the Mossad man in the White House. He was the Israeli agent in the White House. He served in the Israeli army, and his father was a member of that Lehi gang, the Stern gang, that killed all those people. In 1993, they had the first bombing of the World Trade Center, and this was an event that wasn't meant to bring down the World Trade Center. Whoever made that bomb, the FBI supposedly is the one that made it active, was not meant to bring down the towers. It was meant to impress on the American people that Arabs want to bring down the World Trade Center. So that when a few years later, 10 years later, when the 9/11 happened, people would automatically think, oh, the Arabs did it. Of course, haven't you seen the movies? They made good on their promises, on their threats. Now, this crime was prosecuted by Michael Chertoff, who's an Israeli citizen, who was also the person who was responsible for prosecuting 9/11. He was, at that time, in 1993, he was the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. And his fellow Zionist judge named Michael Mukasey presided over the case of the Blind Sheikh. This was the bombing. I think 6 people were killed. It happened in February 1993. Now, what happened, this is very interesting. This is all written in the New York Times, that the FBI was paying this man, an Egyptian colonel, Ahmad Salem, he was paid $1 million for his testimony. What he did was basically snooker or corral people like the Blind Sheikh into positions where they were indictable. They said something, they were someplace, they appeared guilty. And so that this was like a sting operation. And the stinger was this Egyptian guy. And this man went to jail for like 5,000 years, the Blind Sheikh, while this guy got $1 million payout from the FBI and went into the witness protection program, never to be seen again. Now, in 1997, 1998, Philip Zelikow ran something called the Catastrophic Terrorism Study Group, in which they imagined a transforming event which would change America. And this was in Foreign Affairs magazine. You can see that it's Philip Zelikow, John Deutsch, and Ashton Carter. And they were imagining the transforming event that would basically change this nation. They were talking about 9/11. And the men that wrote this, along Philip Zelikow is the man who wound up being the executive director of the 9/11 Commission report. The other two are Ashton Carter here and John Deutsch. And this photograph was taken at the time that they were working on this paper, and they were working for a company called Global Technology Partners, which is an exclusive affiliate of Rothschild North America. So you see, what I'm trying to show you with some of these slides is that the Rothschilds, these big bankers, are always one step removed from the actual crime or from the actual plotting of the crime. But they're in every place you find their footprints. So then these Zionist neocons called for a new Pearl Harbor in order to change the
Zionist
military
neocon.
policy. This was a document written by the PNAC, the Project for a New American Century, which is headed by the family here, the Kagan family. And they wanted to change the American military policy so that America would become the global police force, that America would dominate the entire planet. And they said the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. Then we had, and when 9/11 happened, we had the security of the World Trade Center towers and the security of the airports was both in the hands of the Mossad.
Imagine
Here
that.
we had the company, these are the principal players of the airplane company, this passenger screening company called Huntley USA. It was owned by an Israeli company called ICTS. And here are the chairmen of ICTS. Here are the executives of ICTS. The man in the middle is Yair Shamir. He's Yitzhak Shamir's son. If any of you remember having seen Yitzhak Shamir, he's a small, very thuggish man, speaks very brutally. He was a murderer. He murdered lots of people. And he got his son to head this company. And these other two guys are Rothschild agents, this is Kuckerman and Boaz Harel. Their company oversaw all passenger screening on 9/11 for those airports involved. So the question was, if these guys got on the plane, how did they get on the plane? Were they on the plane? Well, this is all part of the deception.
And this is the one my dad rented the apartment to right there, the ringleader, Muhammad Atta. And see, 15 of the 19 alleged hijackers lived in Florida. Yeah, sure did. Right down the road from where I'm at right now, literally just a mile and a half down the road is where my dad rented this guy. And trying to find the other one. I always forget about the other one, but where the heck is he? I don't recognize him in these pictures right here. I'm sure he's one of them, but anyway. But this was the ringleader. I mean, this guy, he's the main one that they claimed, was the, anyway. But he's one definitely my dad rented an apartment to. I was face to face with him several times.
15 of these 19 hijackers lived in Florida, where duplicate licenses had been issued for at least 6 of them. Others have reported lost passports. What you're dealing with here is you're dealing with a situation where somebody's identity has been stolen using duplicate documents. And these duplicate documents are used to create a false history. Then we knew after 9/11, this is from September 23rd, BBC reported that at least 7 of the hijackers were still alive. So if 7 of them were still alive and the others were having duplicate licenses, who was on the plane? Were there hijackers?
There was no plane.
Were there any? If there were actually hijackers, why did not a single pilot get a chance to push the 7500 warning that we've been hijacked? Not a single one of the planes sent out the signal. It takes 1 second to send, we're being hijacked.
That part.
And what happened here is that the FBI director said, this is in 2001, he said, what we are currently doing is determining when these individuals came to the United States, these were their real names or they changed their names for use of false identification in the United States. Because in Florida, they realized that this was all a big game, false identities, somebody playing the name, playing the role of this guy. And then in September 2002, Mueller said,
yes, I met Atta
Russian investigation.
for sure.
He was head of the FBI
and the other
brand
one.
new guy in the job. He said that he told
2 of
CNN
them.
that there is no legal proof to prove the identities of the suicidal hijackers. So we have no idea who, if anybody, hijacked those planes. And this is from the Mossad book. This is The Little Drummer Girl. I recommend reading this book to people who like to read. It's 5
Hey,
books,
Jennifer,
because
good to
this
see
book
you.
explains how Israel
Always
does
good to
this.
see you. What's
John le
up?
Carré wrote this book in 1982 with help from Israeli military intelligence leaders. And in the book, the Mossad guy tells this woman who's the actress who's helping them along with this plot. He says, terror is theater. The theater's a con trick. You know what that means? Con trick. You've been deceived. That's what it's all a big deception. And that's what the whole thing's a deception. This nation has been deceived for the last 17 years. And what I try to tell people is that a nation that is deceived into war is a nation that is enslaved. So in July 2001, the Zionist, again, the Israeli faction, got the lease for the World Trade Center. How it worked is that this man, Ronald Lauder, son of Estee Lauder, he was in charge of the privatization scheme for the state of New York, for Governor Pataki. He also has a school in Israel at the Mossad University IDC in Herzliya, where this Israeli general, Daniel Rothschild, heads the Institute for Policy and Strategy. So these two men have a great deal to do together back in Israel. And Rothschild probably told him, well, you make sure that we privatize those World Trade Centers and make sure they go to Larry Silverstein. That's what happened. Larry Silverstein did not have the money to take the World Trade Centers to run it. He was lent the money to take over the buildings by some of his partners at GMAC, who went bankrupt in 2008. And what happened is that the executive director of the Port Authority, this man, Louis Eisenberg, and this man, Larry Silverstein, they're partners in a Zionist organization called the UJA Federation. Silverstein was the chairman, Eisenberg was on the planning board. And he oversaw the negotiations that brought the World Trade Center to him. So they wanted to get their guy in possession. In order for the operation to go ahead, they had to control the entire property. Now, Silverstein is also a very close friend of Netanyahu, kind of like Donald Trump. But these two guys were speaking on the phone every Sunday afternoon for years prior to 9/11. What, pray tell, were they talking about every Sunday afternoon?
Yeah.
And this is July 24th, 2001, when Larry Silverstein got the keys to the front door, figuratively. And he said, I am proud to assume the stewardship of the World Trade Center, one of New York City's finest, greatest jewels. And 5 weeks later, this is what was left of those jewels. Nothing but dust and steel. Now, another strange thing is that this man, Ehud Olmert, a deputy prime minister of the state of Israel, this guy, and mayor of Jerusalem, was in New York City on September 10th and September 11th. But what's peculiar about his visit to New York City on September 10th and September 11th is that it was kept secret. Usually, if an Israeli politician of that stature comes to New York, it's front page news. But in this case, it was kept secret.
Imagine that.
So the question is, why was his visit? Why was he in New York City on September 10th and 11th, and why was it kept secret? Here he is. He just got out of jail. He's been in jail for a couple of years now in Israel. And he came back to New York City about 2 weeks later, having been, I guess, coached back in Israel. And he came back and he acted the role of the big brother, because New York City and Jerusalem are, after all, sister cities. And here's with John McCain. But he was in New York City on September 10th and 11th. Why was his visit kept secret? That's the question. And on September 11th, as we now know, on the afternoon, when all the planes were grounded in this country, one 747 LL took off from New York City. A full Boeing 747 took off from JFK to Israel, to Tel Aviv, on September 11th. The flight departed at 4:11 p.m. with U.S. military officials on the scene and personally involved to clear the flight for takeoff. Who was on the plane? These were the rats getting off.
That's true, Courtney.
They were getting away. The culprits were getting away. Now, this is a question about, you may have heard about the put options. There were a lot of people who bet.
That's why there's so many that support the Zionist movement.
And all of those,
even
as the
Christians.
9/11 Commission report said about this, they said that a single U.S. institutional investor with no conceivable ties to Al-Qaeda purchased 95% of the United Airlines puts. But the guy that used to head that company that put all those options was this man here. His name is Buzzy Krongord. Krongord is a fake Scandinavian name. He's a Jewish guy from Poland. But they changed the name. But the thing is, he was executive director of the CIA. So when people talk about what was the CIA's involvement in 9/11, you have to understand that within a company or organization like the CIA, you have factions. You have compartmentalized factions. You have groups that are involved in something in that room, and there's a group involved in something in that room, and they know nothing about what each other is doing. But Buzzy Krongord, the executive director, knows what everybody's doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And his company, he used to be the head of that bank, Alex Brown Bank, investment bank in Baltimore, that placed all those options. You see? Now, here's Alvin Krongord, that's his name, Buzzy Krongord. And here you see, here he is in the middle, and here's his wife, his Shiksa wife from Iowa. And she is connected directly to Rothschild Asset Management. and they live in a huge. This is their palatial estate in outside of Baltimore. And then there's the issue of the thousands of Israelis who were expected to be at the World Trade Center that day. This is from the Jerusalem Post, September 12th, and the Foreign Ministry had received the names of 4,000 people, Israelis, who they expected to be at work at the World Trade Center or in the area of the World Trade Center or the Pentagon on 9/11. And these families had called up to the Foreign Ministry asking about their loved ones. Only 4 Israelis died on 9/11, and so there was a warning that was given to them, and that warning went out on something called Odigo. And this is another article from the Israeli paper Haaretz about how Odigo people who had this instant messaging service, an Israeli messaging service, got messages on their cell phone or on their email or whatever platform that they had, telling them not to go to the World Trade Center that day, that something terrible was going to happen. And the prediction was precise to the minute, that at 8:45 on 9/11, something terrible was going to happen, and avoid going there. So it appears that those 4,000 Israelis who avoided disaster that day got the memo. These are the 5 dancing Israelis. This is one of the first indications. I wrote my first article about these guys because on September 11th, I was in New York City early in the morning. We couldn't go to Washington. We had to drive back to Chicago. And I was in Pennsylvania listening about noon on the radio. And they said that Ted Koppel came on and said that 5 Middle Eastern men were seen photographing and celebrating the attack on the World Trade Center. I told my wife they could be Israelis. And it turned out, lo and behold, they were Israelis. And it was reported in the local paper in New Jersey called Bergen Record. And these are the 5 men. These 2 are Mossad agents, the Kurtzberg brothers, and these 3 are like their operatives, minions. These 3 appeared on TV in Israel and talked about what they did. And this guy, Oded Elner, he said that our purpose was to document the event. Now, their purpose included that they were on the scene, parked in the parking lot on the Jersey side, with their cameras already prepared to take pictures.
Imagine
when the first building hit, when the first plane hit the building. The first
No
plane.
planes.
So they were clued in. They knew it was going to happen. And they worked for a fake moving company called Urban Moving Systems in Weehawken, New Jersey, which the Forward newspaper, a Jewish paper in New York, reported in March of 2002 was a Mossad front operation. It was a front. Its whole purpose was to facilitate the 9/11 operation. This is the head of the company. He fled to Israel. His name is Dominic Suter. And this is one of their trucks. This is one of their moving trucks. And you can see it's been decorated. This is on 9/11. The truck's been decorated with a plane flying into the World Trade Center. I mean, what chutzpah, eh? In your face, America. And then on 9/11, after this is going on, before the towers have fallen down, before the dust has settled, this guy who trained Osama bin Laden, this guy, again, this is Ehud Barak, he's the guy that trained Osama bin Laden. He's speaking on BBC. He just happened to be in London and happened to be in the studio of the BBC, ready to give the interpretation. Remember how General Clark said we did not have American understanding of it? No, we got Israeli interpretation of it. Interpretation. And what Ehud Barak said, it's time to launch an operational concrete war against terror. And that's what we did. But he began this little clip, this little paragraph. He said that the world will never be the same from today on. That's the part that really bugs me.
Yeah.
That our world has been radically distorted and changed for the worse, and it's all based on deception.
Yep. That part
really causes me a great deal of sadness to come to my country today and see what's become of this country. To see that this country is woefully, woefully deceived into war and clueless and apathetic about what we're doing. We're destroying nations of the Middle East willy-nilly, like some biblical barbarians. And the American people don't even know it. And if they do find out about it, they really don't care. They're living in la-la land. We can't go on like this. On 9/11, Benjamin Netanyahu praised the attacks because they kickstarted his war on terror. Israel's war on terror. We are being dragged around the Middle East like a bull with a ring in its nose. He said on 9/11, it's very good. He told us in the New York Times, he said, it's very good. He's talking about the destruction of the World Trade Center. He said, well, it's not very good, but it'll generate immediate sympathy. He said that to the New York Times, James Bennett. He was asked, how will 9/11 affect Israeli-American relations? And he said, it's very good. He was gleeful. He was joyful about what happened. On that day, if you remember, it was estimated that 30,000 Americans were dead in the rubble. That's what they thought for the first week. Now, what's the connection between Ehud Barak and Netanyahu? Well, they're comrades from the Sayeret Matkal. Sayeret Matkal is a covert commando force which serves directly under the Israeli Chief of Staff. And Barak was his commander. So you see, they're sharing a little secret here. And the day after 9/11, Netanyahu said, we must build a coalition against terror today. It's time to take on the militant Islamic regimes with a great deal of strength. We should crush the terrorist infrastructure that threatens the entire free world. Now, if you look at the coalition in Iraq, in Syria, this war on terror, you will never see the Israeli flag. You will see, for example, in Operation Inherent Resolve, the attacks in what we were doing in Raqqa and Mosul, the flags of 67 nations, but not the Israeli flag. Where are the Israelis? Well, the Israelis are kept out of the picture. But just this week, if you watch the news, if you read the news about Syria, you will see that Israel has admitted to bombing Syria 200 times in the last 2 years. They said, we're not playing any role in this war, but they bombed the country 200 times. And then it came out also in Haaretz newspaper a couple days ago that Israel has been supporting and funding and arming 12 of the rebel groups that were fighting against the Syrian government of Assad. 12 of them. They've been paying these people $5,000 a piece. Some of them were getting $75 a month, but it's all been an Israeli operation. And this is a quote from Mr. Netanyahu as well. Once we squeeze all we can out of the United States, it can dry up and blow away. Nice guy. These are our friends. And now who would say that 9/11 was a good thing except somebody who saw some benefit? And he admitted in Hebrew, in plain Hebrew, in the year 2008, he said to an Israeli audience, we, Israelis, are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the American struggle in Iraq.
Bam.
Israel is benefiting from the American struggle in Iraq. We're not benefiting from it. Now, this is the man who was in charge of the investigation, or the non-investigation, because you have to understand that 9/11 was not investigated as a crime. It became an act of war. Therefore, there's no investigation. But this was the man, Assistant Attorney General Michael Chertoff, who should have investigated 9/11, who should have preserved the evidence, but he didn't. He's actually an Israeli national, and his mother was a Mossad agent. So an Israeli citizen was in charge of the non-investigation of 9/11 that should have happened. This is all under John Ashcroft. So you see, John Ashcroft was number 1, Attorney General. This is number 2. And as we now know, we've known since the beginning, that for day-to-day decisions, Chertoff had the last word. And then George Bush made him the head of Homeland Security. It's important to note that in his positions, Chertoff's positions in both places, Homeland Security and Department of Justice, he was in charge of the evidence of 9/11. He made sure that nobody could see it, that it was destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the destruction of evidence from a crime like 9/11 is a crime in and of itself. So if you want to investigate, if you want to find out who's really behind 9/11, you need to prosecute people who committed actual crimes. And he committed the crime of destruction of evidence. He should have investigated the crime. The FBI serves beneath him. Then they managed the destruction of evidence. Zionists oversaw the 2 junkyards where the steel was destroyed were Zionist-owned junkyards.
Imagine that.
So there was all the steel that had to be destroyed because the steel had evidence that would indicate that the buildings were blown up. And then Zionists presided over the 9/11 lawsuits and litigation. This is the Judge Hellerstein. He handled the 9/11 tort litigation. And what the problem with this tort litigation was, thank you, is that his son is a lawyer in Israel, Joseph, and his son's law firm represented the key defendant in the tort litigation that his father was presiding over in New York. That's that ICTS company I told you about that oversaw passenger screening. They were the key defendant in the tort litigation. That's when there were 96 families left.
I'll be right
wanted
back.
to know how these guys got on the plane, who's responsible. And that litigation was overseen by this man, but his son was working for the key defendant. We tried to make that case. I tried very hard to make that known to people in New York City, but nobody really cared. A few years later, a lawyer from Temecula, who was the lawyer for Ellen Mariani, one of the widows, he tried to get that information that I had discovered put into the record. And he was scolded. He was scolded by the court, and they said that this is anti-Semitic by the Supreme Court. It's anti-Semitic to try to put this information into the record. This is how it worked. That's his son. That's the judge for the 9/11 tort litigation. That's his son in Israel. His son represented Kuckerman, that man I showed you before. Kuckerman is CEO of Rothschild Group, and these guys, their company owned ICTS, which is a Rothschild-funded Mossad company. So you see, again, everywhere you look, Israeli intelligence, Mossad, and Rothschilds. And these are the people that oversaw the distribution of the compensation fund. The first compensation fund, which 2,900 families accepted, was overseen by Ken Feinberg, a very high-level Zionist. His wife is on the board of governors of the Jewish Agency. She works with him on this operation. So they paid off the first 2,900 families. There were roughly 100 families left, 96 families left, who wanted their day in court to understand who was responsible for the loss of their loved one. And Sheila Birnbaum, this woman down here, she waged a war of attrition against those families. So that twice the number of people in this room, one by one, they settled these families out of court until there was no one left standing. So 9/11 is a crime of the century, the worst terrorist crime in U.S. history, and has not had one day in court yet for a single one. And those families have all been bought off. They've signed the line, no further litigation. Nobody has standing anymore. But there still are people that have standing, actually. There are people that were exposed to the dust, for example. They could make claims. There's other ways you could probably skin this operation. Now, the Zionists also control the myth and the legacy. Here we're talking about this operation of this memorial at Ground Zero. It was designed by Israelis, built by Israelis. Yeah. Here we have Philip Zelikow. He's the man who oversaw the 9/11 Commission report. This is the man I told you about that had the catastrophic study terrorism group, who wrote in 1998 that catastrophic terrorism will soon come to America.
It's 424 somewhere.
The 9/11 Commission. And he came to the commission with the outline already written. And it was, he had framed the entire document before any of the people even began meeting. So it was, his specialty is creating a myth. And that's what they did. They created this myth that they could give to the American people. But the people that were on the commission, like John Farmer here, said that he was a senior counsel. He said, but the government and military officials told Congress, the commission, media, and the public about who knew what when was almost entirely and inexplicably untrue. So the commission report is not what the paper is written on. These are the two chairmen, co-chairmen, and Thomas Keane, the one in the foreground, said, to this day, we don't know why NORAD told us what they know, what they told us. It was just so far from the truth. NORAD is, of course, the North American air defense system with Canada that failed completely on 9/11 to intercept any of the planes. It's another story. It was a computer crime. They were diverted and things like that. Now, I told you that the 9/11 memorial was built by the Israelis. It was designed and built by this man here, who is Michael Arad, the son of the Israeli ambassador Moshe Arad. So they even controlled the creation of the legacy. When school buses, when you go to New York City, the school buses park around the block at this place, and young kids are taken here and shown this is what the Muslims did to us.
Yep.
This is.
Yep.
And so that they're creating this legacy of hatred against Middle Eastern people, Muslims.
Evil.
And it's all being done to further the Israeli agenda.
Yep.
And the media,
the
very much Zionist controlled as well,
Zionist agenda.
has for 17 years now pushed these false narrative about 9/11 and the war on terror. They've only been able to do that by suppressing the facts about what really happened. Because if they were to present the facts, the story would fall apart. Here we have the New York Times, 3 years after 9/11, the lead editorial. And this is a very telling comment they say in the very beginning. They say, in the 3 years since 9/11, we've begun to understand that it's possible to know what happened without knowing what happened. Now, this is the attitude that the biggest paper in New York City takes about 9/11 truth. The media should have done its own investigation. I'm just one person. I discovered a lot. But if the New York Times and the media had done an investigation, they would have discovered so much more.
Imagine
but they couldn't do that. Their hands were tied. They're tied by their owners. So here's our political predicament in a nutshell. If the government and media are lying to us about 9/11, it means that they are controlled by the same people who carried out 9/11.
That part.
Our media and our government are controlled by the people who carried out 9/11. That's a very serious state of affairs. But that's where the logic tells us where we are. Now, this is the conclusion here. I'm going to show you the 6 crucial elements of Zionist control of 9/11. This is the hexagram symbol. A lot of people associate this with Judaism, but this is actually the Zionist symbol. The Zionist symbol, not a Jewish symbol. First point, law enforcement. The Zionist controlled law enforcement. Michael Chertoff was in charge of the investigation of the non-investigation and destruction of evidence. Point 2, the mass media, interpretation of the crime. We know Philip Zelikow wrote the commission report. The media interpreted it falsely. Here's what he wrote, Catastrophic Terrorism in Elements of a National Policy in 1998, and he went on to write this report. Third point, litigation. They control the court, legal discovery in the court. As I said, Alvin K. Hellerstein and his conflict of interest. Fourthly, they control security. They control security at the World Trade Center. They control security at the airports. These are the 3 guys, Shamir and Skuperman and Harel. They own the company that screened the passengers at Boston Airport and Dulles Airport, what have you. It's an Israeli Mossad company. And as I showed you before, that the people that controlled security at the World Trade Center were Kroll Associates, where that Avraham Shalom Ben-Dor was working. Fifth point is that they controlled the government. At the time, George Bush, you have all of these people who are advisors, second and third place advisors. Here, for example, Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State, her advisor was Philip Zelikow, legal counsel.
Yep.
This was the advisor to Cheney, and these are the advisors to the Pentagon. And the final point is that they control the military.
Yep.
They control the military in several ways. One of the most important ways is that they had control of the computers, through PTEC. They had control of all the government computers, airline computers, what have you. But they also controlled the Defense Policy Board. So they controlled the military response to the crime. They called it an act of war. Then they wrote this agenda that we will overthrow 7 countries in 5 years. The rest is history. And as I said, that star is known in biblical times as the star of Remphan, which is a diabolical entity. This is from the Bible.
Imagine that.
It says, yea, you took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan. figures which you made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon.
Bam.
This is to underline the point
Acts
that
7:43.
9/11 was a hideous crime of evil incarnate. You have to understand that the people that did 9/11 are absolutely evil to the core. And don't forget that. And so that those people don't deserve any sympathy or any compassion.
Or
the people that planned and carried out 9/11 are working for the devil.
Yep.
And here is I'm at the very end now. This is written by a man named Dr. Alan Sabrowski, who was at the United States Army War College, Director of Studies. He wrote the introduction to my book, the little book on the War on Terror. And he said the evidential trail for 9/11 and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq runs from PNAC, AIPAC, and their cohorts through the mostly Jewish neocons in the Bush administration and back to the Israeli government. None of the denials and political machinations can alter that essential reality. And this is the end. This is a picture of me the last February at the Oscars. And, I had to sign with my friends, Mike Chicky and Ann. 9/11 Truth is the peace movement. Because what I'm trying to explain or show to the people at the Oscars is that we have to understand that the truth of 9/11 will bring us peace. Because when you understand the truth of 9/11, the logic of war evaporates. So thank you very much. The only way to defeat deception is to increase awareness of the truth.
Yep. Wow, that was good. All right, let me play a song and then we'll go from there. I got to take a break real quick. Somebody's about to knock on my door.
When a tree falls to the ground and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Does it count? Does it matter if it lives or if it dies? Tell me who's to decide if your life was taken out and there's no one there to hear you. Would you make a sound? Would you count? Would you matter if you lived or if you died? Tell me who's to decide. From the moment of conception when the cells make connections, reflections of the parents as the egg splits in sections. Comprehension cannot enter this dimension. Invention of creation by divine intervention. Miracle of life, countdown to death. Numbers on your breath like the hairs on your head. Wrote the records of your history mapped out from eternity. Recorded in the book of life, the story of your destiny. Every soul has a reason to breathe. Every child a right to proceed once they're conceived. Think of all the human beings destroyed, were ever given a voice. You think they'd be pro-choice? What kind of parents gonna ever regret they chose life over death at the baby's first step? You better bet that there's a cause and effect. When a human life is shed, you wanna be the prime suspect. When a tree falls to the ground and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Does it count? Does it matter if it lives or if it dies? Tell me who's to decide if your life was taken out and there's no one there to hear you. Would you make a sound? Would you count? Would you matter if you lived or if you died? Tell me who's to decide. Tens of millions of children have been lost in this genocide. This Holocaust persists every day and it's worldwide. The rights of a woman shouldn't permit a homicide. Exactly like a Nazi guard gassing with cyanide. The only difference from a clinic to Auschwitz is that at least a small percentage made their way out of it. You think we learned when we told ourselves never again? Repeat offenders of the slaughter of the innocent. We're way too busy, gotta save the environment and make sure dogs and cats have a warm and safe habitat. What's the consequence of taking this path when evolution puts a human on the level with rats? It makes no difference then who lives or who dies. The inconvenience of a baby is like swatting a fly. The silent cries and deaths are never observed. What would they say to their parents if their voices were heard? Hidden from view, the destruction of millions. If they saw the future lies, would they still make the choice to kill them? How could this happen on a civilized earth when there's more concern for animals than babies at birth? The day will come when we will suffer the wrath and have to answer for our sins and uncover our past. Those sins are hidden.
Are going to be released in the future again. The return of the Nephilim, the fallen angels, the gods themselves with a small g. They are coming back during the apocalypse time.
Cracking his cherry rip like the beaks of a griffin with sharp pointy tips and the grip of a falcon. Grasping with grappling talents and worn on medallions of battling Scythian nomads. So many masterfully sculpted renditions, artistically marvelous, monstrous visions. Descriptions of possibly authentic dragon-like animals, fossilized mandibles gradually formed by the annual downpours and rainfalls, exposing mysterious samples. Examine examples like cylinder seals, revealing the secrets of serpents unveiled by ubiquitous snaps of a snapdragon. Sounds serendipitous, just like the epic of Gilgamesh. Several conspicuous mythical beasts can exist, and in fact they could actually be crossbreeds from angels who planted the seeds on indigenous demons hungry to breed.
Days of Noah. Book of Enoch.
In the paths of giants, revealing a hybrid. What we see in this antediluvian world full of giants, if we could go back and observe all the things in the laws, but Enoch and eavesdrop on Nephilim hybrids and fathers who flocked in a pack of 200 deserters. These tyrants who plundered like pirates and lusted for flesh in a cycle of violence. They squandered like pigs in the mud of defiance. And promo like Dr. Moreau and his science. Monsters without any use of a latex appliance. A violent alliance of violent Goliaths. Drowned and deluged by the flood into silence. Desirous delinquents, they lost their commission. Now Lucifer's legions, they turned into demons. Chained in and blinded and bound in abyss. Living with locusts deep in the pit. In the days of Noah, from the book of Enoch, in the paths of giants, revealing a low hybrid. It's lost from our time in our history. Should we be blind to the mystery? Willingly ignorant to the reality. Fallacies formed by fallacious facsimiles. Angelic offspring conspiracies. Possibly aliens visiting, revealing sinister enemies. Posing as saviors with remedies. Entering mental capacities. Cavities. Demons are grabbing off that.
All right. Well, I hope Brian didn't leave before the 9/11 stuff, because I hadn't seen him since that started, or before that started. But he missed out on all that good stuff. Anyway, I appreciate all of you being here, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. If I go over 3 hours, nobody's gonna watch it probably, And I'd like for a lot of this information, if not all of it, to get out there. So please do your homework and be aware of the Noahide laws and the Zionist movement to implement the beast system. And we don't want to be one of those that are delusioned and fall for the beast system and the Antichrist that's coming in the next few years. So please, please, please always stand up and speak up against evil, tyranny, and repent, prepare, watch, and share the truth until the end. You guys are my family. I care about you, and I hope that you are blessed and kept by the Father. God bless you all. And Tommy here, Tommy out. Thank you so much. Bye bye, guys. I'll be back soon.